All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. My name is Thinker St. James, and tonight we are going to be going over UFC 311, Makhachev versus Moicano. We're going to be talking a very little bit about UFC 312 for various reasons we'll get into, and going over some news from outside of the UFC bubble. And to do all of that with me, as always, my good friend, my co-host, the Ohio player, and the man voted most likely to jump in on one day's notice into the title fight of his life, Mr. Chase Parton. How you doing, brother?
I have never been more locked in than I am about to talk about these fights. I'll tell you, these prelims went really, really well. And then the main card was honestly really, really fun. I can tell you, I didn't feel delirious after a long day of work, I'll be honest. I felt like I was having a great time. The UFC was never better, I'll tell you. 2025.
Well, I'll tell you something on top of all of that from my perspective. This sport, it's like every time that you think that you got it all figured out, every time that you think that your picks are where you want them to be, everything is going to make sense. All of the things that you think are going to happen are going to happen. It throws you a million curveballs, and this event specifically threw them all at once, it seems like. So I was like, there was a lot going on here that really had me a little bit upset, but the event itself was pretty entertaining. So, of course, we're going to get into this right now. We're going to be going over each and every fight from UFC 311. If you have things that you'd like to talk about in the chat, if you're watching live, you can go ahead and throw them in the chat. If it's not relating to the fight that we're talking about at the time, we'll come back to it at a later time. But to start this thing off, as we said, this is UFC 311. This is Makhachev versus Moicano. Took place at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California. Before we get into the actual event itself, how about the Intuit Dome, man? That place looked amazing.
As soon as it opened up, I said, this looks like a sphere without a whole side of cameras on one. And then I questioned, wait a minute, are the seats empty? What are the lights going on in the background? And to this moment, I really don't know how they did it because that crowd was there, but they just had glowing orbs on every single one of them. It was crazy. The arena was awesome.
Yeah, it is amazing presentation going on at this Intuit Dome, which is new from what I understand. They were talking about that on the broadcast a good amount. And yeah, when it comes to the lights that you're talking about, I guess that they have them in between the chairs maybe, but that's crazy to me considering that in every arena that I've ever been to, you're packed in there like sardines. When I was at UFC Tampa, my buddy who was sitting next to me, I felt terrible for him. I got the aisle row, or the aisle seat rather, specifically so that I would be able to spill out over it into the aisle a little bit, but every other seat in the middle of the rows, you're locked in like right on top of the other person. So to have it set up in a way where you could actually see those lights, pretty impressive in that regard.
Yeah, I will say, shout out Steve Ballmer, the owner of the LA Clippers. He's the one who had this vision to get this done, and he had it a while ago, back when I was a fan of the LA Clippers. Think about how long ago that had to be. And so the fact that he finally had, this imagination come true, and it looked phenomenal. Like, we didn't even talk about the Jumbotron yet. Like, that was insane. One, that it wasn't just a box in the middle. It was actually something that wrapped around the arena and played things on it. Like, it was like a WWE entrances that they had later on in the end. It was awesome. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, and I hesitate to even really call it a jumbotron in the traditional sense. That is because it's like it's actually like a big wraparound array of screens that are like I'm kind of assuming either a very very thin double sided display or like
Projectors.
one of those transparent like film type of things that there's the technology just looked really crazy because you could see the image on both sides of it. They're doing like the aerial shots and things like that. So the presentation was fantastic. Like you said, it reminded me very much of the Sphere Light. So really, really nice to see. The outside looks cool. Definitely a great place to see a show based on what we saw from this event. So, getting into it, before we actually even get to the first fight, I think that we should at least address the elephant in the main event. The last time that we talked about this card, it was UFC 311 Makhachev versus Sarukian 2. Armin Sarukian pulls out of the main event on less than 24 hours notice, essentially. Kind of wild.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. It was so the fact that we got face-offs at a press conference, and then the next morning you would wake up essentially to some people in the world, and then Moicano's facing off with him like after the official weigh-ins. It was absolutely ridiculous because I remember this is how quick it was. I was sitting on Twitter as I always do with the Discord open, and we're chatting, we're seeing what's going on, and I hear, Armin's maybe out, and then we have some undisclosed information. And then, I get on, I'm scrolling some more and I get some more notifications and it seems to be true. I get in the shower. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, we got to figure something out. I get in the shower and I come out and Hanato Moicano was announced. Like, I'm telling you, it wasn't that long of a shower, guys. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, it was definitely interesting from my perspective. The one day that I'm not actively keeping track of everything in real time, I come back to the Discord and see a wall of conversation going on about all of the madness that was going on there. So crazy times, and shout out to the organization for being able to pull it all together. This was not as crazy as like the Danny Gay situation with Diego Lopez and things of that nature. Renato Moicano was already booked on this card, of course, to fight Beneil Dariush. That fight did not take place. So Renato takes the slot in the main event. Dariush apparently got his show and a win bonus as well. So he got taken care of. I think they handled it pretty well, but kind of wild. And that is the sport of MMA in real time for you right there. So
Yeah,
pretty crazy. But
100%.
yeah. So, all right. Well, let's actually dive into these fights that did take place as expected. Starting it off with Tagir Ulanbekov versus Clay Carpenter. Clay Carpenter, one of four undefeated fighters that fought on this card, all of which did not leave with their zeros.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And so, right off the bat, what I'll note, and I'll give a quick shout out to my boy Elite for stealing the words out of my mouth. Tagir is huge. Like, he actually is a massive featherweight or flyweight, excuse me. And the fact that he was scheduled to fight Josh Van now makes me like, I'm actually very happy because Josh Van, again, he's like 5'3". Like, Tagir is really fucking huge. And, weight bully or not, if that's what people want to believe, he knows how to wrestle and he knows how to win a fight. And Clayton Carpenter honestly put up a decent battle. It wasn't a unanimous decision feeling per se, but Tagir really he got it done, and I appreciate him because that was the first leg that I needed. So
Yeah, it's really kind of an open and shut sort of fight with this one. Decent high level grappling exchanges. Carpenter, as you said, I think he navigated this fight pretty well, even in his defeat. He seemed overwhelmed by Tagir and what he was bringing to the table, which, as you said, I mean, he was definitely a lot bigger Tagir was, and there was just a skill gap. I mean, it was kind of wild. What I was saying about on the watch along is that to have the number 11th ranked fighter fighting in the first fight of the early prelims is kind of crazy to begin with. They said it might have been because Habib, who is the main corner man for a lot of these guys out of Dagestan now, was pulling triple duty on this card,
right.
cornering for 3 fights. So I guess it kind of made sense from that perspective, but it just goes to show that Clayton Carpenter, even as an undefeated fighter, is coming in against a pretty high level competition here, and it showed. It really was essentially as expected, unlike a number of fights on this card that did not go as expected. But Tagir jumps a rank or two off of this one. He called out Pantoja, which I mean, I think that there's probably some likelihood of that maybe at some point, but the top of that division, as we've talked about plenty of times, is so like tightly locked that I think Tagir Ulanbekov is going to have to really claw his way into that conversation a little bit harder.
Yeah, I will say, I agree with you, but I will say, out of these first four fights well, five that ended in decision, I think I would say that this one is on the lower end of the rankings of those. I think there's some more exciting decisions that come up after, more weirdness that comes up after. But this one is just kind of straight and narrow, like he got the win, easy kind of deal. So
Yeah, exactly. This was a pretty like boilerplate start to the card, I would say. You know, you're just kind of getting into the swing of things and whatnot. So fine fight to start it off. Really nothing too noteworthy to go over. And I think that my last note would be that I think Clay Carpenter doesn't have anything to be ashamed of in that performance, and I think he'll come back and be fine going forward.
100%.
All right, let's move on to the next fight. This is Bernardo Sopai versus Ricky Turcios. I was a little bit let down by my boy Ricky Turcios to an extent here. I think that he handled himself, but just not well enough. What do you think?
I think Bernardo was able to make an impressive comeback. You know, he took a whole year off after we won't talk about the KO again, of course. But this performance was like, again, it was really one, it was impressive because he eventually was able to start laying power down. Like it's not like he faded away and then the shots that he was landing weren't becoming effective. Like he was hurting Tercios all the way through the fight. Like it was arguably more dangerous later in the fight for Tercios. And Sopaj, in his first fight, you know, he gassed a lot, and that's kind of what led up to, you know, that knockout. And this one, he did gas as well. He was taking some huge breaths. I don't know if he was starting to play possum kind of deal with that later on, because it looked a little like, I don't know, but he was able to keep a pace even when tired that was coasting to a win. And it wasn't necessarily coasting because he was dropping bombs. Like it was good.
Well, he had to keep that pace because Ricky is such a pressure fighter, and that is certainly to his credit. This was a good clash. I don't want to give the impression that this was not a good fight. Definitely, I would say that this was like brawler versus disciplined, is kind of how I was looking at it, because Ricky just puts all of that pressure on at all times. He's really like in your face throughout the entire thing. But I think that that is when I started out saying that he kind of let me down a little bit. I think that that's sort of worked to his detriment a little bit in this regard, because I think that Ricky Tercios chases too much. I think that he's great with the pressure, but he rushes the action to the point where he gets himself a little bit out of his own rhythm, is what it looked like to me. Like there were times where he was kind of cooking, and then there were times that like it's like he has such a drive to be in your face that he doesn't put the other two steps into the equation that you need to have like a full game plan with it. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just going to go head first into this and hopefully my hands will follow. Well, that's not always going to fly. So, you know, he's been seeing that happen in a couple of his fights now.
Well,
He's a, yeah, go ahead.
no, well, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, yeah.
What I was gonna say is it's unfortunate that Ricky Tercios at one point, you know, was competing with Raul Rosas, right? They
Yeah.
fought, yeah. And so, you know, and now his, like you said, he's throwing these flurries in there that are just not as effective as he needs them to be, and he's leaving himself way too open. And the shots that he's landing in the exchange aren't doing anything. And it's just a shame that somebody in their second UFC fight is able to catch on to that very easily. And it's telling probably for the route that Ricky's going down. I mean, if somebody in their second UFC fight can kind of dog walk you like this, brother, you got work to do, I guess.
Yeah, not a great look for an Ultimate Fighter winner for sure. But I mean, to Sopai's credit, I think it really is more the story of the fight kind of falls on him because he is so nicely poised and strategic with some of those strikes that you're talking about. Like it really was a very, I mean, I wouldn't say like polished as in like he's like final form, of course, you know, he's early on, as you said, but it was a very nice technical display that we were seeing from him. And again, the navigation of it was, I think, very much to his credit because of all the pressure that Ricky was putting on. He is a dog. I mean, he'll go out there and take some heavy damage, which you see every time that his hair goes flopping around. You know, he's taking those shots right on the chin a lot of the time. And Sopai was just able to kind of keep his composure, pick the shots when they were appropriate, and it was a much more effective method than what Ricky was trying himself. The
Yeah,
other note that I did have before I let you go is that the backpack attempts were where I really was let down the most because I kind of knew that Sopai was going to be a little bit more powerful. Ricky's not like you were saying; his shots are not like always super heavy impact, but that if you're going to be pressuring to the point that you can get yourself to those backpacks, you got to be effective when you go for the attempts. And he had two times that he went for it, both times got shrugged off.
yeah, I feel like we had a couple fights on this card where it was kind of later, it was slow grind beatdowns, and we'll go into them. And I think in this one, I wasn't as worried as other ones for Ricky to pull off a win. Like I kind of felt like there was just no hope for him. He was just outmatched, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's I was saying towards the end with that second backpack attempt that would have been his opportunity if it was going to happen. And then when he got shrugged off very easily, I mean, he slid right off of that one. I was like, all right, this is going down the drain. So too tired at that point. Clean striking from Sopai, few well placed knees from Sopai as well. It was a good performance.
Yeah, and I actually, other than praising Sopai, because he definitely deserves it, but Ricky Tercios, you had opportunities to give up and you didn't. So I'll give you some respect, man. Like there still is a fight there. I just think some well placed matchmaking is what's going to keep you around.
Yeah, and the only other note that I have for Sopai being early on in his tenure with the organization is that with the clean striking, I think that because don't get the impression that he didn't have good output, but I would say that if he can keep the technicality and up the output just a little bit more early, then there's some legitimate danger there.
It was also nice to see him, putting on some good sportsmanship. He wasn't being an asshole, so that was nice.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Tercios has had a little bit of issues with that. So, he has ground to make up there, and losing your fights also does not help that. So, shaky ground for Ricky Tercios right now, I would say.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens going forward, but good fight. Moving on. This is the first fight that I started to get upset by. this was an upsetting fight to me, and I'm sure that you've got plenty of thoughts about this. This is Muin Gafurov versus Rinya Nakamura. Go ahead, because I got plenty to say.
So I normally shouldn't listen to people, right? Because like coming into this fight, I'm like, ooh, Moin Gafurov, he's a cheater. He's gonna figure out how to win. He's gonna figure out how to do it. I don't know. And then I listen to everybody and I'm like, he really is not that great. He would have to cheat to win, kind of deal. And then I watched this fight. Thankful I kept my money away from this because bro got knocked down. They gave him one. He knocked him down about 8. Like that was no, and like you think that that's a funny thing I'm saying, but like no, he really knocked him down every round multiple times, and it was embarrassing. Like Nakamura looked very scared after, like obviously after the first knockdown. Okay, reassess the situation, gather your bearings. After about 6, 7, why are you not doing anything different? Like it was ridiculous. He just kept prancing around. He was never picking shots. He was never trying to counter. He was literally just in a defensive guard and not guarding the right shots. Like Gavrov was just like I don't know. He just is not. He looked like a what is this 35 bantamweight Shamil Gaziv is honestly what he looked like. I don't know if you guys got that too, but like the body, it was all there,
I can
and
see it.
and the fact that he was just dropping bombs on Nakamura, just making him look dropping bombs on Nakamura. I didn't mean anything. I'm just saying. It's
Don't
crazy.
read anything into that.
It's a crazy, crazy fight to happen because yeah, he did knock him so many times.
Well, really, I think that this was the first of a couple of fights where the fighter that you thought was going to fight one way did not fight that way. And it did not work in their favor whatsoever. However, this fight is almost unique in this respect. Nakamura didn't do anything through 2 rounds. I mean, this was atrocious through 2 rounds. Nakamura was on what I would class as a sightseeing expedition. He let Muin Gafurov have the most real estate humanly imaginable to do whatever the hell he wanted, and thus that's what Muin Gafurov did. You want a clubbing overhand from a mile away? You can have it.
Mhm.
This what bothers me the most about this fight, like, is like aside from me not getting the prediction right based on the way that Nakamura was fighting, is this fight would give the casual observer the impression that Muin Gafurov is good.
He's a fucking
And
Hall of Famer after this one.
and that is just so off base. It's like if you give the other fighter all of the leeway to do anything that they want. Sure, they can look good. Anybody can walk in there, and if you just stand in front of them doing absolutely nothing, they can do whatever they want. They can land whatever they want. DC said on commentary that Nakamura looked robotic in his striking. That's an understatement. That robot needs a fucking software update.
Yeah, it was really bad. Honestly, I will go as far, especially in 2025, I'll go as far to say this was the worst representation from Japan that we've had in a while. Because
Yes,
we've had some studs come over from Japan. And for bantamweight, like there's no reason that you should have looked this not okay, robotic, slow, hesitant, I mean, hesitant isn't even the word. Like you said, for 2 rounds, he just circled into punches. Like it was bad.
yeah, it was just really really bad. I mean, like they also had said that Nakamura is like a high level wrestler. Then fucking wrestle. I mean, like you saw none of that except for the third round, and even then, it was way too little, too late, and didn't wasn't effective enough to actually make a difference in the slightest. I mean, like you'd be extremely generous to say that he had came anywhere close to winning that round. So I mean, like no, this was just an absolute like it really, I mean, I try to be fair with these fighters, of course, respect to everybody that makes the walk and all that kind of stuff, but this was a rather embarrassing performance. I got to be honest about it.
I agree 100%. It sucks because Gavarov's going to stay in the win column, but I mean, Nakamura didn't deserve to move forward if this is how he's going to ever fight. If this is where we first see it, I'm glad we saw it now and not when he's in a fucking potential higher stakes matchup.
For sure. Yeah, no, exactly. We lost twice. We lost in Rinya Nakamura fighting the way he did, and now having to watch another Muin Gafurov fight in the future. I mean, that's really the takeaway for anybody listening is that don't think that there's anything in Muin Gafurov based on that performance because he did not do a single thing special in this fight. I mean that just is what it is, point blank period. Like I mean, if you put him up or go back into any of his earlier fights and saw how he fought there, he fought the same way basically. It's just in his other fights he had opposition. This fight, no opposition. Anybody who with no opposition can have a performance like that.
Yeah, and he had lower level comp in the before fights that he was.
Right,
So
exactly.
it sucks, and it really sucks to say that that's lower level comp because they put up better competition than Nakamura. So
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So I mean, just a very unfortunate unfortunate set of circumstances there, and hopefully Nakamura either goes back to the drawing board or goes just go wrestle, bro. Just go do straight wrestling if that's what you want to do. If striking's not your forte, then perhaps you're in the wrong line of work.
Facts. I just heard a division opened up in the Olympics or something.
Hey, we'll talk about that in a little bit. There you go, a little teaser for later. All right,
Well,
but before we get there, let's move on to a fight that I know that you've got a lot to say about. Eileen Perez versus Carol Hosa. Before you get into it, I would say that this is another fight where the fighter that you thought was going to do something did not do the thing that you thought that they were going to do. But I'll leave it at that. You go ahead, Chase. Have your
I
moment.
I will start by giving your point of view, some praise. Carol Rosa, she did not look like she was there to win. She was very, again, hesitant, which is odd because Eileen is not some killer on the feet. She didn't shoot as much as I thought she would. Originally, she shot a couple times, but she did keep it on the feet. And then the second round, she did kind of keep shooting. Third round, she just went straight back to striking because she was tired. But Carol, through all those 3 rounds, did the same thing and never pressured, like tried to take like I'm trying to think of she never took the advantage of Eileen gassing out, which is going to be a continuous issue, it looks like. She missed weight last fight and she still gassed up. And shout out to Eileen, but if Carol Rosa was on her shit and if a good striker was in front of her, I mean Eileen was she looked like she was fighting to death and she was winning the fight, like she looked tired and she looked like she was very if there was, another round, it would have been interesting if Carol would have been on the gas type of thing. But Eileen Perez did her fucking shit. I will let you go after I give her fucking praise. She came in here and she did exactly what she needed to do. She kept it on the feet. I know it probably didn't make it into the predictions video because I did it on a cut that it was fucked up, but I said she was going to spin out of her shoes, and she did. She loves that spinning back fist. She can never land it, but she does do well at creating distance because they run away from it. I don't know how to explain it, but Eileen Perez, you are one in a million. Thank you for holding the ref's hand and shaking ass. That was beautiful. I don't know how that didn't make headlines. They were showing the other clip after with her coach. I don't know why they always show the clip with the coach. Like, just do the ref and him do that part. But anyway, great fight, Eileen Perez. Now go ahead.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess I can piggyback a little bit. I don't really have all that much to say about it because it was very similar to the previous fight in the dynamics of it. Hosa just too little, too late with the striking, which is what she was supposedly there to do. I mean, taking picture after picture, she waited too long to let her hands go. She was doing so little at times that me and Vitz King on the watch along were trying to read her tattoos. She has a whole lot of tattoos
Yeah.
with writing on them on one side of her body. We're like, well, I mean, if she's just going to stand there, let's see if we can make out some of what the text says. Um, Other than that, I mean, the wet blanketing that you had kind of outlined in your predictions here on the show certainly was on display at times for Perez. She does know how to smother. I'll give her some credit there. The spinning back fist, I mean, I think she landed one that was kind of clean. So I had a note about that. Like, there must be something there if she keeps going back to it, or either that or she just really, really likes to use it. Um, this was not the greatest performance in my opinion, but if you have a fighter, again, much like what we said in the last fight, if you have a fighter standing in front of you not doing anything, then it's pretty easy to look good.
Yeah.
The other note that I did have though, and this is something that you got to check your girl on, that quote unquote low blow, that cooch kick was absolute bullshit. She did
She's
not
got a
get
dick.
kicked in. She did not take any damage to the actual the actual area. So I mean, she I don't know why she was trying to play that game, because like we saw the replay, it was inside leg all day. But that's just something to keep in mind for going forward if she's going to try to play gamesmanship kind of thing. That's really all I got.
Yeah, and I think I'm just very happy at my predictions because I did think, looking at Carol Rosa's most recent fights, it was very clear that nobody wanted to try to shoot on her. I don't know why. And I'm very happy to say that Eileen at least kept the threat alive. She only got it twice, but she did rack up some control time. And she lost the striking, but the strikes that she landed were at least effective enough that it mattered, So I'm real happy that she got this dub. All ass aside, she needs some bigger trunks if I'm going to stop talking about it. But I'm just saying she's really good and she's on another win streak. Like, it's like high. It's a really one of the higher win streaks in the fucking company right now.
Yeah, and she enters the top 10 with this win. So I give you your praise as well, sir. It was an accurate prediction.
It was a great dog. And like, that's another point of it, is like, maybe she underperformed in what I would say is her best form. But you got to admit, I mean, she came in here odds against her and she still got the dub. So, I mean, if it was ugly, sure, but she got it.
Yeah.
It at least wasn't like her holding her down for 3 rounds type of deal. And then we're like, why did she win? Like, that was a, kind of deal. So,
No, for sure, absolutely, and to that point, this was a great card for underdog picks. I forget what the actual numbers were, but for all of those four undefeated fighters that all lost their zeros, had you parlayed that, like $100 bet would have been like a $20,000 return or something. It was some ridiculous return on investment on that. So if you were betting dogs on this card, you did pretty goddamn good.
100%.
Yeah. So all right, well, let's keep it moving over here.
Let me
Back.
interject before
Oh,
we
sure. Go
move.
ahead. Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. Before we move into the main card, it's something about, again, the presentation that I didn't get to mention. I think happened during the first fight. I noticed where they had, or maybe it was Grant Dawson's fight that we're about to get into. They had stats from the gloves. Did you notice those being shown on the screen?
I don't think I picked up on that. What are you picking
There
up from that?
was stats from the glove, so it was like one name, and then it was like who has more power on their shots. It was like 93% power shots from, maybe it was Clayton Carpenter or something like that, and then it was like 23% of powers from Tagir. And I'm like thinking like where are they getting this? Okay, maybe they have something in the gloves, sure, some science, technology, but how are they computing what's a power shot? Like what is the threshold for velocity that the punch has to be going? It was just it was intriguing that they kept putting it on the side like here's some stats like this person has thrown blah 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 like amount of power in their punches. It's kind of weird.
That's interesting. No, I did not pick up on that. I'll have to keep an eye out for it going forward. I do know that they have. I forget what the actual unit of measurement is, but they have that. I think they call it the box. Don't quote me on this, but
Yeah,
it's like it's the thing that when
that
the
Joe
whole
Pfeiffer owns.
yeah, right. That Joe Pfeiffer has, and that Francis Ngannou when he was still in the
Yeah.
organization, he hits like a Ford Taurus. That's how they calculated that or whatever. So there is like a methodology behind that. I don't know how that translates to the glove specifically, but it is interesting that they're starting to calculate that because no, I did not catch that. So I'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, moving on into the prelims proper over here, Grant Dawson versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. I mean, this was your pretty much boilerplate Grant Dawson performance here. I mean, a little bit more striking maybe than other times, perhaps. I think that there was some highlights there, maybe.
That's exactly where I want to go with it because this
Sure.
was so the parlay that I had, it was Tagir, Eileen, and then Grant Dawson was the last leg of that first one. And it was a clean cut dry win for about 2 rounds, and then the third round he decided that he wanted to test his chin, and I was worried because they started slugging for a second, and I was so worried that Grant Dawson was about to lose this battle with this old man. This is one of the two 40-year-olds I think on the card, by the way. Grant Dawson just keeps fighting ancient people, I guess, but he honestly put up a better fight than you would think by the numbers. Like it was in that third round, I'm telling you, I was worried.
Well, and to that point, I mean, I'll go into the actual like nuts and bolts. There's really not too much
Yeah,
to go into with this one. I mean, it
10
was
minutes
like
of control time, like,
yeah, the striking, early on there was a little bit of striking there. I was like, it's nice to see a little bit of well-roundedness, maybe turning the corner in that regard. But then when it was on the ground, it was the Grant Dawson show that you've seen a million times. But Grant is active on the ground, so I got to give him credit for that. At least it's not like he's laying praying. I mean, he really is like he's doing stuff on the ground to the point where it's not like okay, stand him up. So I got to give him credit where credit is due to an extent. But to the point that you were saying about Grant fighting older guys, Toby, shout out to Toby as always. He was in the chat and the watch along, and he made the point that Bobby Green chinning him and knocking him out when he did kind of forced us into this position where now we have to see Grant Dawson kind of just smother mid-level guys, and he was looking at that as an unfortunate thing, and I understand that viewpoint for sure. I mean, I think that it's probably now time for Grant to get another shot at a decent name so that we can see him either get checked again or become whatever he is going to be. You know what I mean? Like he was right at that threshold with Bobby Green, gets shot back down. Now he's in this middle area. It's like, okay, I mean, he's been winning a good amount of times, whether you like the performances or not. The guy is winning his fights. You can level the same criticism against him as you can level against plenty of guys. I mean, I'm not saying that they're anywhere near the same, but the same type of criticism can go for like a guy like Bilal. You're winning your fights. You're winning your fights. I mean, you can only deny it so much for so long. I think it's time for him to get a guy that's either going to re-establish him as a low mid-level guy or him to graduate past this I'm going to be fighting old dudes forever kind of status.
yeah, I will give the commentary one piece of credit because I feel like throughout the night they were not as good as they could have been. They said Grant Dawson with a good comparison to Sean Brady, and I actually really like that. But going into my next point, I really believe Grant Dawson's striking is the biggest flaw in his game. Like, obviously, it's not where he's great. He got knocked out by Bobby Green, but like even watching now, he left his chin open so much. His striking was slow. And then I'm thinking about people ahead of him in lightweight. It's like, who would he even match up with? It's going to take favorable matchmaking. Like maybe he lands the Dariush type of fight, and then we get to see him against another ancient dude. But his striking, it takes one dude. It takes, like, if, listen, if Gamrot butchers Dan Hooker, at this point, it's like Grant Dawson, you got to step your game up. Like you're the wrestler that is not catching up to the level of striking. Like it's one thing to not have striking and have power, or if you have striking and no power. It's like I don't even see either of those. It's like you have to get the control time and rack that up because if not, you might have got knocked out by Diego Ferreira on the feet, dude. Like that was worrisome.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is where I think it's like a put up or shut up kind of situation for Grant Dawson. It's like we already know what happened with Bobby Green, so there's a glaring hole in the game that has already been exploited. You can either stay as the mid-level guy and maybe he called, like you said, he called for the Dariush fight. I mean, that would
Oh,
be.
is he actually called for that? Oh
Oh
wow.
yeah, oh yeah. He called that
Oh
in the that was the fight that he called out for in his post fight. So
well.
yeah,
Okay.
good. If you didn't know that, then yeah,
Maybe I did
good
hear
call.
it, but either way, that seems like something he would do. Like, come on, he's only fighting old dudes at this point.
Well, and I mean, really, I think that the issue is not the age when it comes to that one. It's just the fact that it would be wrestler versus wrestler grappling situations going on there. That it's like, okay, we see what happens when you go up against a striker who can catch you. You've been caught. Like my point is that like if he wants to stay mid level, then this conversation becomes irrelevant. If he's trying to move up, if he's trying to advance, then he needs to be checked again by somebody who can hang with him in some capacity when it comes to the wrestling. It doesn't have to be the entire fight, but at least enough to be able to get himself to a position of landing the shots, and then B, a guy who actually has the hands to negate the obvious glaring flaw that he has.
Yeah, 100%. It's just really hard. Like I know I'm really hard on Grant Dawson, and I do this every time, and I feel bad because again he's winning, and he did get a finish last fight, and he didn't get this one this time. So maybe I'm a little. Again, you probably could have finished this dude, but I don't know. It's hard for me to see this dude as championship because there's still stuff to fix. Like when are you going to find the groove? You've been here for a while now. This is like 3, 4 fights that I've seen you. So get with it.
Yeah, well, and that's my point. I think is it's like I get frustrated with Grant Dawson, not necessarily because he's going out there and winning these fights in ways that are, less than fan friendly, I guess is a kind way to put it. That win your fight however you want to win your fight. My thing is if you're trying to advance, if you're calling for higher guys, if you're saying, oh, I'm game, I want to fight all the time, put whoever you want in front of me, blah, 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 you're talking the talk, then you need to be able to walk the walk with the guys who are going to bring different types of fights to you. A guy like Diego Ferreira is not going to bring the same level of fight that some of these other guys higher up are going to. So at this point, especially also at this point too, Dawson's got to be on like a 3-fight win streak at least, right? I mean, I think
Yeah,
he's
I
won his
think
last
so.
3. So yeah, it's time for him to either get checked again or just stay mid. Like I don't like this whole like vacillation of going back and forth. Like he gets shot up for the Bobby Green fight, which wasn't even really a huge shoot up at the time. You know what I mean? It's just Bobby Green, fan favorite, a little bit more of a name value there. Like he gets shot up for that, goes back down. It's like pick a lane.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, it really just depends if the UFC believes, or if the UFC fans, if we push Grant Dawson enough, I mean, they'll give him favorable matchups like Dariush, and he might come out here and keep winning. And then when the time comes, he will get humbled. And I don't want to see that for him. I just hope that he fixes the holes in his game that I'm clearly seeing every time. So it's just going to take a lot, I think. But if anything can happen, maybe Grant Dawson can be the one to be champ someday.
Fair enough. And I mean, that's really all I got on this fight. Honestly, there really wasn't too much to say about Diego Ferreira. I mean, I would think that I didn't realize that he was that advanced in his age. If that's the case, then it might be you're probably looking at hanging it up at some point soon. I would think.
Yeah, let me double check. Yeah, he's 40. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
So,
40 years old. I think maybe it's starting to get to that point there,
yeah,
sir.
I get you.
All right, let's keep pushing here. We got this is an interesting fight for a couple of reasons. This is Bogdan Guskov versus Billy Elikana. Elikana coming in on short notice, also up a weight class. I did not realize that aspect of it going into this fight. Coming in on short notice and up a weight class. So Interesting.
I think that's maybe normally how it would go because you don't have to cut as much weight.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, it makes
but
sense. I'm not, yeah,
right,
that
yeah,
part of it's fine. It's just, I mean, just two elements to have to deal with when you're fighting a guy like Guskov, who is like legitimately a pretty scary guy at times. I mean, he
yeah.
gets the Anthony Smith comparison because of his looks. People want to try to roll that into his performances. I mean, like, yeah, are there like certain similarities? I mean, they are, like that light heavyweight kind of um, prototype to an extent. So, I mean, I can see like certain flex of it, but I think that Guskov is like I wouldn't pigeonhole him that way because I think people are trying to pigeonhole him into like the Anthony Smith box that they've created based on Anthony Smith when it's like, no, this is his own dude, and he's doing pretty decent work.
I will let you break down the fight after I bring up that the fighter pays came out. I don't know if you saw that. Everybody's pay for the fights, and so Billy Elicana made $12,000 to come in on short notice. That was it. Unfortunately, was the lowest for the card, and he did step in. And honestly, I'm sure he had plenty of people worried because this was decent for a hot second. So I'll let you break it down.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that is the why this fight was interesting beyond the just the elements that made it up going into it. Is that I mean, this early on in this fight looked like it would be having a lot of people very concerned if they had money on Guskov. I mean, he gets the takedown early and got Guskov's back early. I mean, like the position that he was in, he had him at first where he kind of had his legs crossed, like kind of had like out like hooks like around his body sort of deal, which was not the greatest thing. I was like, bro, you need to lock up the body triangle, dude. What are you doing? But then he did. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now this is a different story. Now Guskov's in a little bit more of a trap position here. I was kind of surprised based on that, like that Guskov was even able to reverse it, which he did late in the round. But then once
Took
he
a
finally,
while.
it took a while. That whole first round was really Elicana. They were talking about it on commentary, saying that he took that first round. I was like, I mean, yeah, because you can't count what happens after the horn,
Yeah.
like it took him a good while to get out of it. So I mean, that first round, yeah, it was a kind of a crazy one for that reason. And what I was saying about after the horn is that once Guskov finally did reverse it, he got him into a pretty bad situation, Elicana, and got the RNC to the point that he tapped after the horn, which is wild.
I think that one is a little blown out of proportion. Okay, because I get it. He did tap, but if you're watching it like I'm watching it, I'm watching, okay, bell rings. He's still holding the choke. Like, let me go, bro. Like, we gotta
That's what Vitz
go.
King said. Yeah, Vitz King
Like,
said the same thing. It was just like, "Hey, get off me," kind of thing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And so everybody went crazy. They're like, oh my God, he tapped. Did he tap? I'm like, well, yeah, he did, but like the round is over. So that was interesting. Again, to note, $12,000 to tap, not just once in this fight. So the second round starts,
yeah, go ahead.
and Gushkov is back at it, right? And the wrestling doesn't get back in Elikana's favor. Gushkov actually gets him to the point where he's not fighting back. I was pretty upset that this fight didn't get stopped because I did have Gushkov by KO. And not too much, of course. It was just a little after I had already won, I was feeling myself. So waiting for Gushkov to just keep raining punches on Ilikana, who's down on one knee, just covering his face, doing nothing. He jumps the guillotine and actually finishes, bro. So not once did Billy tap, but twice did he tap in this fight, and he and on short notice, man, you put up a decent one. I give it to you. You had people shitting their pants. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was interesting in that second round because, like you said, it was all Guskov in that second round. I mean, it was very clearly the tide had swung. Body shots, headshots, kind of deal going on. He really was laying it on. Elikana, it was very interesting when he was like down on one knee and just sort of kept asking him to come on. I was
Yeah,
like,
keep hitting
I,
me.
yeah, I think that it seemed to me that he was essentially asking Guskov to end the fight one way or another, which he was like, all right, well, I guess I'll go ahead and just do that. And he
Yeah.
did. So, unpredictable course of action, but a predictable outcome, I guess is the way that you could look at it.
I think in any other, I think this is again, Guskov may or may not have some fighter IQ issues because in any other scenario, why would you go jump guillotine right there, buddy? Like, why are you initiating a choke? Just keep hitting him. What are you doing? Because if that would have flopped and now you're on the ground, like he just reverses it and now you're on the ground with him, like, what are you doing? So I
Yeah.
think it could have been an interesting situation. Like, what if he would have pulled guard and Gilly? Like, I don't know. I know he didn't and he finished it, but it's like, why did you want to go choke him right there? Like, why not just keep punching him? I don't know. It's just
I guess
weird.
just because he was kind of asking for him to do whatever he wanted at that point. It's like, all right, well, if you want me to do, I guess I got a lot of options. I guess,
Yeah, yeah. And it was like the easiest guilt. Like it wasn't even like it was more just a little neck choke because like there was no resistance. He just let him wrap it up, and it was over, man. It was
Yeah,
funny
yeah.
though. I'll give it to you. Billy was funny.
Yeah. So, interesting. Like we had said here, it was definitely an entertaining display, and unfortunate that it was the way that it was for Elikana. But shout out to him for taking the short notice shot there. I mean, he certainly got us talking about it here. It wasn't like he walked in and got demolished and there was nothing to talk about. He comes in one fight out thereafter. I mean, there might be something there for him, perhaps. I don't know if he's going to end up getting a second fight, but
If he gets a
low
better
level
manager, man, he might. He just
Yeah,
needs to up the pay on that, dude. Like,
yeah,
come
for real.
on, you saved the prelims, brother. Like, fuck.
Yeah. Well, either way, walks away with 12 extra grand and an interesting story to take out of it, I suppose.
Yeah, that was it was an interesting fight. That's where the interesting stuff maybe started, maybe a little bit earlier, but right here where interesting happens. Next fight that we're about to get into. Oh, brother.
Yeah, this definitely interesting for other reasons. This is Azamat Bekoev versus Zachary Reese. Bekoev on short notice as well. This was, we had talked about on the previous episode of this show that Bekoev was a favorite coming into this fight. And we were like, well, that's a little bit weird as a dude on short notice coming in against Zachary Reese, who has been pretty decent in some of his fights. This was an interesting one and not in a great way for Reese.
Dude, Zachary Reese. Not only did he get slam knocked out by Cody Brundage, I will never forget. But this fight here, dude, I couldn't for the life of me understand how Zachary Reese was the underdog. And I can't imagine that people actually live in the future where they could predict these type of things. Why, like, how did he end up knocking him out like that? Like, that was actually pretty crazy because Zach Reese was doing a good job at first, keeping him at range where he couldn't land these bombs, and he was very active in his guard. He just couldn't get him off him, hoping that the round would end, me. But Asmat ends up dropping these massive bombs and it ends up knocking Zach Reese out. I would like to interject here before I get into the funny part. Interject that Zach Reese is trying to, what's the word? To overthrow the judge, the whatever the fucking
Have
term
it
is,
overturned.
overturned because back of the head strikes. And he like posted a picture of the back of his head and it's got like some red marks and some welts or whatever.
Hmm.
In the slow motion, I could maybe see a couple maybe questionable back of the head strikes, but they were clean for the most part, in my opinion. The biggest head trauma that he ended up getting, and I don't know if you noticed, when the referee slid in and fucking annihilated him. He put his head in the canvas. Dude, like it was actually when you're watching it in real time, it is kind of bad, but when you watch it in slow motion, it's like, yo, he put him out. Like, oh my God. Like it was rough.
That ref came in to seal the deal, bouncing Reese's head off of the mat. That was,
Yeah.
I hate to laugh at it, but it really was just the scene after Reese was already knocked out, after his eyes were already rolling in the back of his head, to see his head go bouncing
Yeah.
off of the mat based on the referee who was there conceivably to save him from additional damage. Oh, the irony. But
Hit him with
yeah,
a nice fucking forearm right into the fucking mat, man.
yeah,
Neck, dude, hand on the neck and everything. Like, fucking
yeah, it
stay
was
that. You're gonna be knocked out, brother. Like,
yeah, for real, man. It was bad, but no. Look, Bekoev with the power from those short shots. That's I think the real story here. The back of the head stuff. I mean, what you're saying there, I did not realize that was even something that was in the conversation. I'll have to go back again and rewatch. But I mean, I've watched the fight twice now, and I didn't notice it in the
it's a
moment
quick
either
one.
time. So yeah. Well, you're right. Exactly. Yeah, really. I mean, blink and you miss it. But yeah, I didn't see that. So if they were questionable, then it would be very very razor thin on the questionability there. I would think. I mean, certainly wasn't anything that raised suspicion in the moment. But either way, I mean, like if their side of the headshots, front of the headshots, whatever they were, the fact that they were coming at the distance that they were coming and as effective as they were is pretty goddamn impressive. I mean, it's very rare that you get full on knockouts in that type of environment scenario. I mean, like, you get a knockout from distance, you got the amount of travel distance of the hand and the power that you're generating from that. I mean, to generate that type of power on the ground at close range, Spekoev might have some serious power in his hands.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but it is honestly just one of those weird situations where somebody knew something somehow, because what other outcome is Asma winning other than that? Because, in my opinion, Zachary Reese was off to a good start. And I even thought, like I said, in the guard, he wasn't doing horrible. He just wasn't getting him off him. That was the biggest problem. And maybe that was the reason that once he gets him on him, he's not going to be able to get him off and he's going to drop bomb. I don't know. But
Well,
that was crazy.
with that though specifically, I do think that Reese's biggest mistake, and I mean hindsight, of course, is 2020 on this, so I can't really fault him for it. But once he was down, he ended up trying to fish for the armbar and couldn't secure it. And in doing so, I think he left himself pretty open, like for Bekaev to kind of navigate where he wanted to be position wise. I don't think that Bekaev could have necessarily predicted that it would have gotten to how it got. So, I mean, I don't think that it was like a planned thing, but it was a lot easier for him to get to where the fight would end up going based on the fact that Reese kind of like went into a little bit of a desperation situation with the armbar that he was trying to go for, didn't end up in the position that he needed for it. And thus we end up where we were.
Yeah, 100%. And shout out Checkmate for dropping by. Yeah, exactly. The newcomer on debut short notice to somebody who I'm touting as a genetic freak. Like, the fact that you just get dogged like that is it's just hard. It was hard to see. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I don't think we had this conversation on the show. I think that we talked about it off air, but when you were saying like why is this guy not already in the UFC if he's this level and somebody who obviously some people know the situation with if he came in as a favorite, this is the world of MMA where there are killers lurking in the wings at all times. So this is a good example of that. Don't think that just because a guy is coming in on short notice and you don't know his name that he can't make this happen because
True.
that's the exact same situation that a guy named Steve Urseg had. Steve
Yeah,
Urseg came in on short notice, got a very nice win, and ended up in the rankings because of it on his first fight in.
true. I
So
hear you. So, Asma, I mean, I'm excited to see in middleweight. It's going to be tough because I don't think this style is going to do very well. Like, we got some people who can defend a takedown once you get higher. So, it's going to be hard for him. But if any, and listen, I doubted him once. So, I probably won't again.
yeah, well, I mean, we were just have to see what the matchmaking looks like when it's an actual full on put together fight now.
100%.
So yeah, checkmate saying 2 parlays down. I think a million parlays went down with this next one. Good Lord, this was a sight to behold. This was Hani Barcelos versus Peyton Talbot. Go ahead, Chase. What'd you think?
I think to start off first, like we always talk about hindsight, I think when you start the fight and you look at Peyton Talbot, confidence or not, he looked like he didn't care. And it showed in his fight because he couldn't initiate anything. He was on the oh my god. It's hard to even explain what was happening because I don't want to be rude, but he was getting wrestle fucked the entire time. The entire time. Every time we thought that, like, oh my god, he's up. Like, he's not gonna go down again, surely. Like, he has this great skill set that we've all known for so long. He does this, he does that, he's a pole dancer, whatever you want to go with. It's like none of it showed. Where was the translation? How I don't know, man. It's just hard to say.
Well, what I will say to this is, and we're going around in circles with it, but it certainly stands. Is that hindsight is 2020? This is the exact right fight for this to have happened to Talbot. I kind of wish that I had thought about it a little bit more critically going into it for
Well,
that
because you were
exact
right on
reason.
predictions. I swear you said this was a great dog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I definitely said that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely said don't count Harney Barcelos out. You know, yeah, that's a veteran fighter and certainly showed in this fight. But I think I overestimated Peyton Talbot's ability to adjust because really what happened here is that Harney Barcelos was all over Peyton from the second that this thing started. I mean, from the first second of this fight to the final horn, this dude was on him like fucking glue. I mean, like he never gave him an inch to breathe, and I think that it overwhelmed Peyton in a very real way. He just wouldn't let up. The cardio for 37 years old. Shout out to him for having the cardio. I mean, he weared a little bit towards the very end, but I mean, for those first two rounds at the very least, I mean, he just would not relent, and it was very apparent that I think Peyton wasn't it was a situation he wasn't used to. And that is why I think I should have had a little bit more forethought about this fight, because this is exactly what you would expect from a fighter who has gotten his way in a lot of fights previously. When things don't go your way and you have to adjust and pivot what you're doing, that's when you really see the veteran elements of a fighter and like their fight awareness, things like that come into play, and they're just not established enough for Peyton yet because he's a little early to the sport. So, in the second round, Peyton tried to apply more pressure and strike. I mean, Hani Barcelos had the odd angle shoot for the takedown. I mean, that was a very veteran level ability to pull that one off. And then he got that toss. That toss was so nice, bro. Do you know the toss I'm talking about with the legs
Yeah.
up and over?
Yeah, he sunned him pretty bad in this whole fight, not
It
gonna lie.
really was. I mean, he had him flattened out several times. I was kind of surprised he wasn't able to finish this fight.
I think at the end of one of the rounds, I may be misremembering a different fight, but did he have him in a crucifix at the end of the second round? Like,
Maybe
right when the bell
briefly,
rang?
might
I
have
think
been,
yeah,
but I mean, if it wasn't a full on crucifix, it was certainly close. I mean, like he had him in a whole lot of different positions
yeah.
all over the place, and at times, I mean, he literally did have him flattened out. There was I think at the very end of the fight, if it was this fight, I also could be misremembering, but I think he had him flattened out and was wailing off on him, and it was, if there had been 30, 40 more seconds
Mhm.
on the clock, that could have gotten stopped at that point.
Well, and he also had a couple good chokes on him. I mean, to Peyton's credit, one thing that he did show, if anything, is that he doesn't get choked out. I mean, he at least was able to defend that after getting beat down. 30-26 is nuts for somebody at a minus 1300 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just hard. It's hard to take positives away from this because there was so many positions where he was doing not much to help himself. I don't know if coaching wasn't doing their part or if he wasn't listening, like, or what the game plan was, because it just how can a single leg and a double leg catch you so off guard? I think he maybe sprawled like once really well, but I don't think there was another moment where I was like, okay, there, he's doing it. He's learning throughout the fight, like he's getting better, which we've seen other fighters do. But this
Yeah.
one is not it.
No, that's what that I really go back to the same point that I made. I don't think that it really had much to do with anything aside from him just being overwhelmed. I think that it was a pace that he was not used to. It was a level of ability that he was not used to with a pace like that. Like the elements that he had to deal with a veteran fighter were not there in his previous fight. So I mean, this is what you end up getting. I think all of the combination of skills that Barcelos brought to the table were too fast, too quick for Peyton to really start making the adjustments, and it got away from him. It got away from him too early, and he just wasn't able to get himself into the fight.
And if you want to give pity for Peyton Talbot, and you want to be one of those guys, he didn't ask to be a favorite, guys. In his eyes, this is just an even matchup with somebody on his skill level, and he just got outmatched. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the story is he's one of the biggest prospects to blow, to become a fraud, like in front of our eyes. So
I mean, I'm not I'm not a fan of the fraud check terminology, but I can understand why people were kind of using it in this case. I wouldn't fault them for it. I did think it was almost kind of sad hearing the crowd bite on every little thing that Peyton did, though. Like they wanted him to win so fucking bad, dude. Literally nothing was working for him, and every time that anything looked like it possibly maybe could work, the crowd was going wild. I was like, guys, you're barking up the wrong tree here.
I don't know if you made it to, or if this made it to your side of Twitter, but everybody was comparing Peyton Talbot, not just his looks, but now that he's sucky, he's just Jordan Levitt. So,
I think I did see something like that. I wouldn't count Peyton out like altogether here. I mean, he's
oh, I'll
early
be
on
betting when
still.
he's a dog, or if it's like minus 175, we'll
Exactly,
put
yeah.
money on that.
Yeah, no, that don't let the recency bias, like, take him out as, like, somebody who still has, like, a solid future ahead of him. I mean, he's what, 26 years old? He's got plenty of time to adjust and make himself into a more, experienced like, this is the same type of, analysis that I would give to when Raul Rosas got checked. Wildly different circumstances, but the same idea. It's like, take the loss, learn from the loss. Now you know how you need to conduct yourself. Go back and watch that tape. You know what I mean? Like, really, that would be the advice I'd give to Peyton is like, go back and look at how you got to where you ended up in this fight and learn from the mistakes and get your mental game right to the point that you can anticipate and adjust on the fly a little bit better.
I spoke at the beginning about Talbot, how in the he had a demeanor of like he wasn't there. I don't know if maybe that just is his personality, and he's just a very calm, collected dude, which is one good during the fights because he was able to stay calm in a lot of positions that he was compromised. But I also do believe that he doesn't have the switch. Like he can't just turn on where he's like, okay, I gotta finish a fight now. It's like if he's not coming in the fight in a groove ready to go and he's able to knock the dude in a 1-2 clean combo, like then it's gonna be rough for him. I don't know. It seems that he needs to get some stuff going.
Well, that's definitely the that goes to the point of like you need to be able to respond correctly to what you're getting back. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like that. There needs to be that the instincts need to be developed a little bit more for him. So, I can certainly understand those criticisms. And I think, yeah, like, I think Checkmate said it pretty well here is, it's learning on the job and he'll come back better. Hopefully we'll see. So, I mean, now think about it in these terms. Now, next time that you see him, like you were saying, you get him at some good money, then there's a parlay in the making, perhaps.
100%.
But for now it was Hani Barcelos's night, and I was happy to see that again. As an old man myself, it was nice to see old man Hani Barcelos telling this youngster to get off of his lawn, go back to hanging out with Frank Ocean or whatever.
Yeah, whatever that's about.
Yeah, a lot of little speculation going on that I won't touch, but anyway. All right, let's keep it moving on over here to a fight that I think probably if that fight that we just talked about didn't bother you for some reasons, this fight probably bothered you for other reasons. This is Rainier de Ritter versus Kevin Holland, and I think that Kevin Holland is starting to get himself on some pretty shaky ground. What are you thinking?
Yeah, we like to throw around the term gatekeeper for Kevin Holland, but brother, you're letting people through the gate now. Like we can't really, you're losing your job. How can we pay for this? So, and then it also does go back. I don't know. I'll bring it up on the show. I know you saw with the Rampage podcast how he was trying to beef with him and saying that he doesn't care about the fight on side. It's like I know that's just something you throw off the cusp, but like it looks bad when you come out here and you get subbed in round one. Like, aren't you a jujitsu guy, Kevin? I fortunately did not believe that you were going to win this one ahead of time. Towards the fight week, I maybe had a little more faith in you. I don't know why, but I'm really glad that the pay slip went towards RDR because he's really ready to be. He wants to be champ. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think that my better judgment kind of weighed out in the end too, because if we go back to the predictions episode, last episode of this show, I was saying that I kind of thought that Holland has a good shot in this one, but I'm leaning a little bit towards RDR. But I would have had Holland on like a different parlay kind of thing, I think is what I said. I think on verdict, I ended up going with Rainier de Ritter, and I'm definitely glad I did because what I had said then, and certainly was an accurate prediction here, is that you never know what you're getting with the Kevin Holland fight. It just depends on what version of him shows up and how much longer will the organization abide by that, is my question, because this was possibly the most textbook example of competitive BJJ from RDR that you're going to see. I mean, like this was when I say competitive, I mean like competition style, like because that was the note that I think Gerald Meerschaert had before their fight was that he's got a very like tournament style BJJ to him. It's not necessarily an MMA style as much. It's not as gritty, like in the motions as some guys like that mix it up really well. It's very kind of polished, except he is kind of awkward, so it just sort of all shakes out in a weird way with him. But either way, the point is that like with this example here, that it was pretty much down the line, just I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then there's the end of the fight. So if you can't navigate that, and you're going to be Mr. Jokey guy, you're going to be this sort of wild card maverick guy, like that only works if you are winning your fights. We talk about the narratives in this sport. You're writing a narrative that I don't think you're going to like, especially as the dude who is saying, "Oh, I want to fight 6 times this year." Brother, I got news for you, man. You 1 or 2 more of those at most if you keep losing. I think the stat was kind of crazy. Isn't he like 1-5 in his last 6 or something like that?
Yeah, that might be nuts, and that might be no.
I
Okay, yeah,
mean,
you might be right. Last 5.
okay, fine. Fine. 1-4 in his last 5. I mean, like, this is that's not great.
Yeah, I agree. But this, I was also going through some internet issues with the stream at this point. So I started the fight, and then as soon as I got it working, they were already on the ground, and RDR had his back. Like this was one of the quicker, instances where somebody gets him to the ground off of like it was kind of an interesting shot when I finally saw it. Like it was kind of off a punch, and he got the single leg and just kind of dragged him down, I believe is what happened. And then he instantly was able to just flow to his back and just get the choke in. I mean, RDR did exactly what he needed to do to dispose of somebody who's not championship material.
And started it off within the first 5 seconds of the fight as well. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the other point of this. That's what I was saying about this being like a very textbook example of competition BJJ. It's like, okay, like if you take MMA out of the equation, if this had been a straight BJJ fight, that would, I mean, like it could have ended exactly the same way. And if that's the case, and Kevin Holland's supposed to be, this high level dude that we all kind of thought that he could or could not be, depending on what night of the week it is, then this is not a great look. And I am skeptical as to how much longer like the organization is going to be comfortable with this, because the other point that I had in the notes was that Kevin Holland was doing his same cheesing towards the camera and talking bullshit mid-fight and all that stuff, and it's all very cute and all very fun when it's a competitive fight and everybody's enjoying what they're watching. In a performance like that, it becomes rather irritating, at least to me.
Yeah, he might be finding himself on the end of like a celebrity boxing deal with Rampage or something like that. He might make more money. I don't know. He's probably got a good deal with the UFC, but again, if he keeps losing, that next contract that they negotiate with him, it's probably not going to look like what he wants it to.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rampage probably has a good couple of pounds on him, but crazier things have happened. Either way, I just think that this was a very, very poor showing for Kevin Holland, and that record that we just brought up is kind of speaking for itself. So, Kevin, if you want to continue being the guy that just doesn't give a fuck about rankings and goes out there and fights a whole bunch, then you need to win these fights. That's point blank. Period. End of the story.
Yeah, but now he's going to get somebody who's super lower comp than him. Hopefully he wins and then gets another fight where he comes back and like can gatekeep kind of deal. But
And if
who
that's the
knows?
case, I wouldn't be super mad at that. I would like to see him stay out of anywhere near like the like I would like to see him like low rankings at best, if ranked at all, kind of thing. You know what I mean? I don't care if he's around and continues to fight as much or whatever. He's a great guy as the go-to for short notice. Of course, he's very game. I got a lot of respect for Kevin Holland in a lot of different areas, but I don't like having a wild card like that in the rankings, because it's too unpredictable and it just throws off everything else. And it's also kind of disrespectful to the other fighters that are out there really trying to gun for the belt.
Well, and that's what I think I was going to say is like, maybe it's not too unpredictable if you just go into it knowing who's actually here to win something. Like Kevin Holland's here to win money. DeRitter is here to win gold. Like, and you can't do that with losses. I mean, you can win money with, losses sometimes. You're going to get a paycheck. It may not be as much as you want. You might get a bonus, but DeRitter doesn't really care about that. He's ready to go get bigger and better things. And in this division, it's going to be hard for him, I will say, but he seems determined, and you can do a lot with determination.
So, I mean, to that end, I think that the Gerald Meerschaert fight was a lot more a showcase of his abilities, obviously, than this one was. But what are you thinking his potential would be in that regard? I mean, you thinking that he actually has a shot there? It's kind of seems kind of crazy, but it is middleweight.
I mean, it does seem crazy, but I mean, because he's kind of older, ain't he? Like this is a seasoned guy. This is a two-time. He's 34. Okay, I
I
mean,
mean, right there at the cusp,
it's gonna be hard. But if Dreekis moves to 205 eventually, anything's possible because that division is.
Yeah. Well, I so it's it seems a little bit like we like I think that now with 2 wins in the organization, it is time for him to get a higher level guy. That's really going to be the bigger test. I don't feel like we've seen the correct test for him just yet. Like I think that like I was saying, the Gerald Meerschaert fight was a lot more of a correct test than this one was based on the circumstances. But we need to see a guy who is higher level, higher ranked, that is going to bring a different style of fight to him that he hasn't anticipated in these fights.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
So hopefully that will be his next one, and he is game. I give him a lot of credit for that too. In both of these fights now, he has said like I'm ready to go as soon as you want me back. So, I appreciate that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, he's a Chad. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we'll see. But speaking of Chads, new mythical fighter unlocked. Jalton Almeida versus Sergey Spivak. What have I said about Jalton Almeida since we started this show, basically? Since the early days of us doing last week's fights, I have said if Jalton Almeida can start throwing hands, we might have an actual contender at heavyweight in a sea of nothing that we have
Yeah,
going right now. And finally, Jalton Almeida is able to utilize his hands for something other than grappling.
I would like to start by giving praise to the polar bear, Sergey Spivak. Honestly, I will not lie to you, bro. You are in some way, some form, one of my favorite people to watch because you actually do come in here and you have an idea and a sense of how to fuck shit up. You went in here and you held down Jailton Almeida for 2 minutes. I was worried. I'm not going to lie. I thought something was going to happen. I didn't think Jailton was going to be able to get up because while he's great at grappling, how often is he on his back? Ain't that crazy? And then, by the time it got to the feet, and this is where I start to feel bad for Sergey because he really impressed me. He impresses me every fight that he comes in here. Not the Cyril Gahn fight, but every fight that he comes in here, he has shown improvement and determination. Like I said, he was striking once they got to the feet, and it got to a point where it just looked like he couldn't take the shots anymore, which unfortunately was very early on. And I think that's just something that he's just not a dude that can take big shots. And I hate to say that because he was doing so good. And then it got to the feet. And I honestly, when it got to the striking, I was leaning maybe Sergey might be able to do it. His striking is a little cleaner at the end of the day, but Jailton was just able to land these heavy bombs. And Sergey has this, he potentials to cover up and just cower into the corner kind of deal. And I hate to say that because this dude really is fun to watch at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, glazing of Jalton Almeida aside, I think that I was a little bit quick to the draw just because it was so unanticipated for me. The criticism has been there for so long with Jalton Almeida that all he needs is hands. So it's like to see him finally have those. I never thought that TKO and Jalton Almeida would ever be in the same sentence in our existence. So, glazing aside, this was decent two-way action as far as the reversals on the ground go. I mean, both of
For
them had,
big dudes, holy
yeah,
shit, they flipped each other, which was kind of crazy.
absolutely. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. I've always liked Sergey Spivak. I know you've had mixed feelings about him in the past, but I do think that he's game. I mean, like and fighting at heavyweight, you got to be to an extent because the power that you're facing. With he's not one of these guys that's gonna go out there and try to cut the weight to get an advantage at light. I mean, he wants to stay in heavyweight. This is where he's comfortable at, and this is the type of stuff that he ends up having to encounter. So I do give him a lot of credit as well. I think that he held his own for as long as he could, but those shots did end up being the decision maker, which is just crazy to see out of Jalton Almeida.
Yeah, and it was honestly, like you said, the grappling for heavyweights when they were on the ground and Jailton was able to butterfly him and flip the position and then get Sergey on his back. It was honestly it was refreshing to see. And I know we're never going to see something like this again, because Sergey and Jelton just like they subtly have great wrestling. Not Jelton, but like Sergey has like subtle great wrestling and grappling that is like super underrated, but it only comes out when he's against a great grappler as well. Like Marcin Tybura, he wouldn't have got that if he wouldn't have been initiating some sort of grappling exchange that would have, opened up kind of an unimaginable spot kind of deal. So I think Sergey, he has the fighter's mind for it. It's just his body. I don't think the body shots add up for him easily. Like with Cyril Gahn, he tore him up with that. That knee to the body was crucial. And then Jelton Almeida, just the heavy hands to the head. I mean, I don't even think he went down. Yeah, it was a finish on the feet, but you could tell that he was like he didn't want to take any more punches kind of deal.
I think that did they not go down? I think they might
I
have ended on their knees, but either way,
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe. Well,
it
there's no
started off,
knockdown. That's the only
yeah.
way that I was going off of it.
But yeah, well, fair. I go because I think it was another one where it was like off of the reversal and they
Yeah.
kind of already were down. But regardless, the point is that like it was refreshing to see Jailton Almeida even able to do that in any way, shape, or form. So I who knows what could be in the future for Jalton in that regards. You brought up Cyril Gahn. That was the call out. Is that the one that makes sense? I think it probably does. Cyril Gahn coming off of a quote unquote win, but we all know what happened in that fight. So, I mean, Jalton is capitalizing on exactly what you outlined in our stream that we started off the year with, where we were talking about the state of the divisions, saying that like if you can gain some momentum at heavyweight right now, only a couple of fights is what it takes to really be in
Yeah.
the conversation here. So if Jalton Almeida has kind of skated by a little bit, he's taken a couple of losses here and there. That the Curtis Blades loss is going to really stick out in a lot of people's minds because of the circumstances with that one, but if you can start gaining a little bit of momentum for yourself and utilize your hands effectively, then there is certainly something there. I've been wanting that to happen for quite some time. I just think it's very refreshing to see it actually starting possibly to take shape.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
So, yeah, good job, Jalton. Let's see if he can keep it going. All right, moving into the meat and potatoes of this card, man. What a war we got to witness between Yuri Prohashka and Jamal Hill. What'd you think?
I will start by disclosing that I have a surprise for the stream,
Uh-oh.
and I want to go ahead and show it because this is the perfect time to do it.
All right.
So, after Yuri Prohaska came in here and did his motherfucking doings, I obviously had to come out and get my boy's flag.
Oh, look at that. Let me full screen you real quick here. Hold on.
Boom.
Not me.
You see it,
Ah,
boys.
you.
Shout
There you
out
go.
Yuri. I can keep holding it
Oh,
forever.
I know. Oh, there you go.
There we
Gotcha. My
go.
bad.
And then while I'm in full screen, he'll go right over here for the rest of the thing. Oh, maybe. Yes, he will. Bam.
All right, there you go. How about it, my man, with the new flag situation? Get this back over here. All right. Well, how about it? Very cool that you got that, and what a perfect time for it, considering what Mr. Prohashka was able to do. I mean, this was really was a very hard fought fight, and I got a lot of praise for Jamal in this one as well. But Yuri, it was as scary as it always is watching Yuri Prohashka fight. Man, that dude with the low hands and the wide stance, never checking kicks, like everything that you always think about Yuri Prohashka and always can say about him took place here. But bro, him figuring out some way, somehow to make that shit work, it defies logic sometimes.
I will praise the opposition first. There is no point in this fight that I felt Yuri didn't have a chance for Jamal Hill to land a bomb and put him out. And I envisioned it. Honestly, I could see it so clear in my day. Yuri just has his hands down, dips his head one way, gets dropped, and folds. Like I've seen him countless times. But I also would like to throw in there. They messed up Jamal's record on the Jumbotron. He was 12-1. It had me thinking this dude only lost to Paul Craig. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. But it was 12-2 at the time. So anyway, Jamal Hill came in, put on a performance that beforehand I didn't think he was capable of because I had never seen him outside of Alex, to be fair. And what he did was prove that he is deadly. And I think he obviously lost, and there wasn't a time where he did get Yuri compromised to a point that I thought, he was going to end it. But Jamal Hill is worrisome. He's somebody that when I watch, I will remember like he might be able to just lay somebody out. But on the other hand, Yuri's head movement is just in the zone, I guess. I didn't think it was that great, but honestly, people have been praising it. That last shot where he dips, hits him with a straight, and then comes up, it was nice. It was very nice. Jamal Hill did take a beating, but I I respect a beatdown like that. Jamal Hill, you might have won fans over with a loss like that, to be real.
I would say so. I would hope so anyway, because what I had said about Jamal specifically coming into this fight, and definitely on the watch along, hear a lot of that when he's walking to the cage, is that we all have talked about Jamal and his um, perception of reality. Obviously, the Pereira loss has been the narrative that has been plaguing him for however many months now, and his mental state is somewhat questionable at times. And I thought he really needs to win this fight for himself. I think I even said that on the last episode, that like this is a fight that for his psyche, he really needs to win. So to see him go out there and put it all on the line the way that he fought, I think speaks to how he perceived the fight and the level that he wanted to bring to the fight. And in that regard, I do think that he succeeded to an extent. I mean, like, it was certainly a war. Like for him to get dropped as hard as he got dropped in the first round. I mean, the straight left put him down. And I don't think it was actually that shot that did it, but I believe that he broke his nose in the first round because like he had the cut on the bridge of the nose, swelling up real heavy when he was on the stool, and he was breathing out of his mouth really really heavily. So all the signs were there that the nose was broken, and he stayed in that fight for as long as humanly possible while Yuri was really navigating it very, very effectively. He was just one step behind, which is unfortunate. I thought he was very gracious in the defeat. He's a guy that I think a lot of people want to like. So it's like a performance like that hopefully got him, got them around the curve a little bit with him. Um, it's just he sort of did himself no favors with the way that he acted publicly about the Pereira loss, but you can see why he has been where he in the rankings wise, in the conversation, all of this stuff. You know, he is a dog. He is going to go out there and try to make it happen. He belongs there for those reasons. Can he secure, a spot again? I mean, like, and be, a champ again? That I don't know, but I don't want to dislike Jamal, and I really hope that this showed why people should like him.
I think the last thing that I will bring up, and I'll say it, I'm trying to think. I was kind of surprised when I heard it, but it made a lot of sense. I mean, Yuri has only lost to Alex in the UFC.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. I guess that is the case, isn't it?
so it is crazy to think that he wants a rematch, but like it's the only dude he's lost to. I mean, can you blame the guy for he wants this win? I mean, and to be honest, I even thought about it. Like, if he does actually beat Alex that last time, like props, man. Like what can you say? I mean, he was determined, and there was only one dude that he couldn't get past. And if he finally does it, and they give him a third fight, which honestly, I gotta love Yuri, man. I would love to see it.
How can you not? And look, Alex Pereira at this point is the white whale of
Yeah,
the division. I mean, it is what it is. Every guy who's lost to him wants to get that loss back. Of course, we mentioned it on the last episode as well, that it's kind of crazy that he had that situation with Israel Adesanya and it's now overtaken that position basically.
yeah.
But so it makes perfect sense to me that would be the case if they want to do part three. I mean, like, maybe the thing that I would say to that, though, is the same criticism that I had going into the second fight with Yuri and Alex, is that Yuri keeps claiming that his style has evolved. He said it in the post fight. Oh, I think you saw the evolution. I'm like, no, Yuri really didn't see much of an evolution. You fought exactly the same as you always fought to me. I mean, like, maybe there were certain differences that, like, on a micro level that you can kind of point out here and there, but like all of the glaring criticisms still are there. So I don't see how it would go much different in the third time. I don't.
I think I understand why Yuri's confused is because in the first minutes of his fights, like the rematch with Alex and then this one, he gives it a good minute where he like keeps his hands up and he'll like do some different stuff. But then after about a minute, I think he just kicks into like auto drive and he's back to doing his thing. And I don't think he understands that he's doing that because at first everybody was like, "Oh my god, he's got his hands up! Oh my god!" Oh, and then by the end, it's like, "Yuri, put your hands up! Yuri, put your hands up!"
Right.
Like so, it's
Yeah, so it is what it is, but I mean, look, at the end of the day, this I think was really the feel good story of this
yeah,
card. Of course, for the fight, I heard that Yuri and Jamal ended up having a drink after the fight, so obviously good sportsmanship there. Jamal's always been that way too. He's not one of these guys, like, he talks his shit like every fighter does. Whatever he gets, obviously the whole thing with him and Alex is a little bit of an extenuating circumstances, but I think deep down, Jamal is like a decent guy, and Yuri is obviously a good dude too. So I think we would be a little remiss if we did not mention the shaving of the head situation, and that the cancer patient that he raised money for as well, who got to watch him get this win in person. I thought that, again, feel good story. Really, nothing negative to say about Yuri on this one.
yeah. And I also will note, I don't know if you saw his interview with Megan O'Leary in the backstage, where he said that he's got two dudes from back home and he's going to take them to his hotel and show them something crazy. I don't know what the fuck does he mean, but boy, I'm sure that they had a good night after. Like, wow.
And Meg O'Leary was invited to that.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, if Megan O'Leary took her opportunity, listen, I'm sure it was a nice one.
I,
So,
I don't. Yeah, there's plenty that you could say down the line of Meg O'Leary and three crazy checks, but I think that maybe we'll be a little bit more couth than that.
yeah.
But yeah, no, that certainly that quote. I think that's one of those, like, translation possibly issues that,
Yeah.
like the words just weren't there, but goddamn, did that make me laugh when I saw that. I just saw it as like a meme, like just in text form, and I was like
Yeah.
reading it, and word by word, I'm like, oh, what the fuck.
Yeah, you read it and you're like, no way does Yuri actually say this. And then you watch it and it's like, oh yeah, Yuri actually says it. I'm not surprised either. It sounds exactly like something he'd say.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that's got like that sort of like unintentional funniness to him because of how serious he is at times.
Yeah.
Like, you put someone that serious outside of like a hyper serious situation, and it just creates its own comedy. So there's really nothing to dislike about Yuri, man. I can understand why everybody loves him so much. Me too. I like him a lot as well. I just would like to see him evolve the style a little bit so that he can achieve the things he wants to achieve. But other than that, like I said, this really was the feel good story of the card. So really a nice happy ending on this one.
100%. God, I love this one.
Absolutely. And moving on to the co-main event, certainly a happy ending for some people, I would say, but this was quite a crazy one. This was the championship fight. This was Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov for the bantamweight title, and this turned out to be pretty entertaining as well.
All week, I was following with Father's plan, and I was going to take Umar and Islam. But I will give major props to my good friend Toby, who invited me along on this beautiful journey to join the Marab Mafia. And we got this one done together. We took down Umar and his uncle, and we shoved it in their face. Like, I'm telling you, this was such an exciting fight because not only was it interesting for the first two, where like, oh, Umar's gonna like smoke him. What is going on? Marab, no. And then Marab's like Terminator cardio kicked in, and Umar's like tired as hell. And then Marab starts styling on him. He starts doing the emotes. He starts, not getting taken down and doing this. Like, dude, Marab, he may not be what you love in a champ, but he is what you love about some of the fighters. He has personality and he does fight until he loses. And he's not losing right now. So I'll give it to him. Rob really showed me that I need to put some respect on his name. This was a good performance.
Absolutely. To your point there about the first two rounds, people are saying that Umar took those first two. Rewatching it, I could see it on the watch along. I mean, we were both, me and Vitz King, saying that we thought that Marab took those rounds. I mean, and I think that what that is that it's just the pace. Marab is the cardio machine. The name is exactly as intended, and it's 100% accurate. I would say that upon rewatch, Umar definitely took the first round. Second one, a little bit more questionable for me. And I thought that maybe there might be a case to be made for the fourth round, possibly going to Umar to a minor extent based on some of the actual nuts and bolts of it. But really, it all gets washed out because of the pace. Marab was all over it. And, I got to give myself a little bit of a pat on the back for calling this one the way that I did on the predictions, because this really came out exactly as I was expecting in that regard. The pace was set by Marab from the start of this fight, even in the rounds that were a little bit closer. And he was able to navigate to the point where Umar was getting very frustrated. And you can see it on his face for sure.
I think the way that I scored it, I said one was questionable, and if questionable, I said one judge would have it for Marab. I said round two was definitely Umar. Round 3 and 4 were Marab. And 5, I agreed was Marab, but I heard people saying Umar won round 5. Or not, yeah. So that's just my assessment. I will also note that I was completely wrong judging people who said that Umar had better striking than Marab. I see it. Round 1 and 2, it was there. The kicks were looking good, but that's not the point. I think the boxing was actually the main part. He was able to get in and out, tagging Marab up really quick and not letting Marab, corner him and then drop bombs on him, which is eventually what he just kept doing.
Sure.
And then so I give Umar some major props. His striking looked a lot better than what I gave him credit for. However, it was very embarrassing for you to get shit whipped to the mat by Marab, to get thrown on your back by Marab, to not be able to take down Marab. Which it's funny that clip will go out of him pulling him down and Marab doing this,
Yeah.
because like moments later Marab literally got taken
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
but he did get up, so I give it to him. And it is just Marab really just styled on him, and it's not that he styled on Umar, but he kind of styled on Khabib too. Like they're like one and the same. Like he really put it to Khabib that your wrestling is not me. So I really appreciate Marab. He really did do some shit.
Yeah, one thing to Marab's credit that should be talked about more, I think, is a point that Vitz King made on the watch along. One of his greatest strengths, aside from the defending of takedowns, and then of course his own, obviously, is capitalizing on the takedown attempts that he does not get. Like, if there are times when he's shooting him, because I mean, like, you see the number of attempts on.
30.
I mean, bro, come on. It was just, the pace was relentless in that regard. But anytime that he didn't actually secure a takedown, he always catches the hand off of the break. Like,
Mhm.
he will land the punch every time that doesn't work out for him, and it happened consistently here. So like, it's kind of a double like positive for him. It's like, if I'm not going to, either I get the takedown and secure that, and that's great, or I get a free shot out of it, and I can continuously add those up because there are so many of them. So I thought that was really like a good thing to note as a positive for Marab when it comes to the striking, which he is a little bit behind on.
I will make the note also, and I want to give the opposition point of view from my good friend North in the Discord. Marab going into this fight was one takedown away from tying GSP for the most takedowns in UFC history.
Yes, he
And
was.
and to know Umar specifically said he's not going to tie that record against me. Not only did he tie it, he broke it by 6. So there's that. But to go with what North was alluding to, and I do agree with him, giving Marab 7 takedowns in this fight is pretty gracious. Most of them he didn't even secure. Like the ones where he just threw him on the mat and walked away, like you can't really consider those takedowns. Like he didn't secure anything. And so a lot of them were questionable. I definitely think he tied it and broke it maybe 1 or 2, but 7 takedowns is pretty ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think again it goes back to the same point that we were kind of showcasing in the sense that our round scoring is a little bit different. The perception of that kind of element is a little bit different. I really think that the big deciding factor here in like it's the if it's one of those things that like if all factors are down the line equal, I'm not saying that they were in this fight necessarily, but if all things are down the line equal, then like there's like has to be one other element that sort of pushes it over the top. And I really do think that A, it's the pace, and B, just the fact that Marab was having the time of his fucking life out there. Like
Yeah.
I think that just optically it was like, this guy ain't losing this fight. How could he be losing? Look at him smiling so much, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. You're making a good point, and I think not only is that good for us to see, to finally see Adam Marab, like we did get it a little bit with Sugar, but in this fight, we really got to see just how much Marab enjoys being in the cage, and that's what we would want for a champion. We would want somebody who enjoys being in there, and not only enjoys that, but is the best at what they do. So Marab is still continue. I know his resume is crazy, but in my opinion, he's still earning the stripes that I think he needs to be a great. Like he is a great Hall of Famer by now, but like he's in my book becoming what I think a great champion is. So I respect that he's evolving.
Yeah, and this is a great fight to show to anybody who has the perception that grapple heavy fights are boring. Like in
Mhm.
my opinion, because this was an entertaining as fuck fight through 5 rounds where there was not a whole hell of a lot of explosive quote unquote action. You know what I mean? Like this was really a lot of rolling around. It was a lot of circling around. It was a lot of chasing going on. I mean, like there it wasn't like super like again, explosive is really the way to describe it. I mean, like, you're not seeing like power shots, you're not seeing bombs landed, you're not seeing knockdowns, that kind of thing. But this was still a really, really entertaining fight. And I think a lot of people who are more casual to the sport, it's like if you start seeing people going to the ground, it's like, oh, great, now I got to sit through this. But it's like these fights can be very, very entertaining. And I think that if anybody that has that kind of perception, you show them something like this, maybe you change their mind.
Yeah, I can see that. This was definitely a fun showing, way better than what we got at the Sphere from Marab, in my opinion. I think this was what I needed to be solidified as Marab Mafia for sure.
Oh, yeah, yeah, more so than the Sean performance, you're thinking.
Yeah, I think this one was definitely more of a performance that, like, you know, two people have to, and it can't be just a one-sided performance, of course.
Yeah, from that respect, you're absolutely correct. I think I like the Sean fight only because of the questions that were answered in
Mhm.
that fight. Because everybody was saying the one good shot from Sean, the one good shot from Sean, and
And
then
he never fucking took it.
I
Mm.
mean, we saw exactly how that went down. But no, you're definitely right. This was a spirited, competitive fight. And shout out to Umar. I mean, I think that there needs to be said. Like we were talking a lot about how he got hot shotted to get this shot in the first place, going from number 10 to number 2 after beating Corey Sandhagen and then getting a title shot. It was an extremely high and quick ascension to be able to be in this position. And he certainly held his own against the best fighter in the division. So I really don't think he has too much to be upset by aside from not getting the nod.
Yeah, you know, it kind of reminds me of what happened in the flyweight division with Pantoja and Steve Erceg. It's like you see somebody who gets the shot that they claim they deserved it, and they do prove that they're closer than we would have presumed. Not in this matchup, of course. People thought it was a lot closer. Maybe there were levels to it after a certain amount of time, but at the beginning of the fight, it was definitely a close encounter for either of them to get one dropped, you know, an easy knockdown, or you know, get a good sequence in the grappling. This was at a certain point in the fight, I actually lost the danger for this. Like I think I realized like, okay, these dudes aren't going to knock each other out. Like this is going to be just what we're seeing, but we're just going to see more of it. And then Marab made it more fun as it went on. I think that was what was key, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's nice to see that these hot shotter situations can actually be like that. Because I was as skeptical as anybody of Khalil Roundtree getting his shot, and we saw that that was a really good performance as well. So good deal there. Umar has plenty of time to continue to be in the conversation, and I'm sure that yeah, I would not doubt that he'll have his shot at the gold again.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's probably not going to lose to a lot of people under him at this point. Like depending on where he lands in the rankings, he probably won't have that much of trouble.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the champ retains in the first title fight of the evening, and in your main event of the evening, much the same. Islam Makhachev versus Renato Moicano. Kind of an anticlimactic way to end the evening, just based on all of what we had seen leading up to it, especially with the fight that we just talked about with Marab and Umar. But really, was there going to be a different outcome with this one?
I remember exactly when the fight started. I said, if Hanato goes out here and loses in the first round, like can you blame him? Like it is a short notice fight. He's stepping up to fight the fucking champion, and like he's even said it before. Like I'm not beating Islam, and like I'll give him credit. He went in there and the first 30 seconds of striking looked interesting. It looked like maybe this isn't as close or as far apart as we thought. And there was like some fluke knockdown. It was kind of fluky.
It was a slip.
Yeah. So, and then unfortunately, it was like the easiest submission ever. Like Hanato he didn't pick up on, Islam threading the arm, and two, he just didn't try to escape it. And again, I thought back to right when the fight started. If he loses in the first round, can I blame him? Like, so I don't know. It was tough.
You are not lying about how quick that Darce got sunk in, bro. Good Lord, was that quick? I mean, it was just like it was that opening where it was the neck really was wide open at that point, and Islam just said, "I will take that." And I mean, it was like fucking putting on a glove for him, really. I mean,
I'm
just
happy
boom,
though.
boom.
I'm
Yeah, oh
happy
yeah,
because like
sure.
it proves like, Islam. Unfortunately, it is kind of a questionable opponent, but like for him to finish in the first round, it's like he does still mean business. Like he's not here to fuck around. Like, okay, finish Volk first round, finish it, Hanato first round. Let's get this shit over with. Like,
For sure. And I had that in the notes as well. Man, a few words on the microphone. He says, if you want this belt, come into the cage and take it. I give him a lot of credit. I think he is a great champion. Obviously, he's a great fighter. I think that goes without saying. Pound for pound, number one in the world for a fucking reason. But I think that he is a representative of the sport. I really have very little negative to say about Islam, man. I like him. I think that he's showing his dominance fight by fight. Again, this fight is a kind of an odd situation, but it just is just one after the next. So I did think that it was very interesting that they say that Sarukian is not going to be the next in line. I don't necessarily agree with that, only in the sense that, look, circumstance wise, yeah, I can see from that angle of it. But what we had said coming into what would have been that fight is that I really do think that Sarukian is the best option that you have for a competitive fight with Islam. So if it's not going to be him, like what are the other options and why do they deserve it more?
yeah, I really think Dana got swayed by social media because like the videos of Armin hurting himself with Nina or in the gym, it's like you can't. It is funny, but like it is ironic that it is all very connected loosely. And hearing Armin, like Nina even posted up, she actually went on a lengthy rant, like I didn't hurt Armin, he didn't hurt himself in our training video, blah blah blah. So Armin went on Ariel and talked about how once he started cutting, that's when his back started hurting. So and Dana is maybe just thinking like if you want to fight, like you got to battle through some stuff. Like I know back injuries, me personally, back injuries, that's nothing to kind of fuck with, but like you move your feet, lose your seat kind of deal in Dana's eyes.
Yeah, I do get that aspect of it. I think that that would be a good point to mention that new episode of the Yama Proper Show is going to be coming out this week. So keep an eye out for that because I've got some stuff to say about Armin and his situation with Nina Drama that possibly could have led to him having those back problems. But yeah, no, I understand it from that aspect of it. But as far as the matchmaking goes, that makes sense and could actually make it competitive with Islam. It's like what we talked about with the state of the division in general. I mean, like you've got a lot of guys that are on the way out in this division. Not a lot of really great options as far as a competitive fight goes. I mean, are we going to have Oliveira again? I mean, like I guess that's kind of where people are angling for. It just I think that Armin really is your best bet on as far as like an actual like competitive fight.
Well, I feel like, and there's an old quote. What was his name? Derek Seaver. Is that his name?
Dennis Siever.
Dennis, I always say Derek. Dennis Seaver, he has like a quote saying, like, I don't need to be the number one ranked guy. I just got to be high enough ranked for them to call me up on short notice, something like that. So, like, this is one of those divisions where apparently people just fucking get hurt. You got Charles who cuts his fucking head. You got Armin who hurts his
Bro.
back. You know, so like, what can you really do? You just got to be good enough to be Hanato Moicano and be ready to fucking whoop Islam on 1 day notice. Like, I don't know.
I guess, but then I mean, look, if the angle is to keep Islam in a sitting pretty position, not having to really worry about any legitimate competition in that regard, then sure. I mean, you can keep feeding him whoever you want, but I short of like one of these hot shot situations that we were just outlining. I mean, maybe, but even then, it's kind of a little bit questionable. Below, like some young killer at the in like the 10 range, maybe. I mean, maybe there's something there, but it's just like I'm upset by the idea that it's not going to be Armin only because I think that that was going to really be the fight that could have decided a lot of things.
My last interpretation from Dana's point of view on Armin is like, well, sure, we're not going to book you for a main event again because you hurt yourself and you almost cost us, like, you know. So maybe that in Dana's point of view, it's like you're going to have to fight again because we're definitely not put you in the main event. If you hurt yourself during your cut, like that's your own stupid fault. Like, in his mind, I'm sure. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, and
so
I get all of that aspect of it. I think it's unfortunate, is I guess what I'm
yeah,
trying to say.
I
It's just
can see that.
yeah, but so I understand all of that part of it, and I really do hope that that fight does end up happening before Islam eventually moves on because he has been talking about moving up. So we'll have to see when and if that does end up happening. But I would like to see that fight go down. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
it's unfortunate.
And am I correct in that I heard that Dana finally did come around to saying that Islam is the pound for pound number one?
I mean, it was more of like this. Here, ask me if Islam's the pound for pound.
Is Islam the pound for pound number one best fighter in the world?
Yeah, sure. Are you guys like, yeah, sure. Are you
Oh,
guys
okay.
okay done hearing it? Like, yeah, I guess. Like, that's he basically just
Oh,
like
yeah.
shoot it away.
Yeah, nice to be able to kind of shrug it off after you were the one pushing that narrative for so long, Mr. White.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
And it's funny, it's like after he beats Hanato on 1 day's notice, that makes him the pound for pound. Like, that's now the pound for pound. Okay, sure.
yeah,
I
I
got
guess
you.
it's a good point. But either way, I think that the fans have known what the situation there is for quite some time, so we don't have to go too deep down that road. But any which way, I mean, that is UFC 311, Makhachev versus Moicano. Final thoughts on this card?
I think and people really want to call this, and I know we compared the arenas to the sphere, and they want to say this is like a sphere light. I think this was perfectly fine. This was a good card, even with the ending. It's like it wasn't climactic to a point where it's like we expected so much. It's like once you see somebody on short notice losing first round, you can't like fault them like it to a certain extent. It's like you watch Volk get head kicked. It's like, I mean, he set up the head kick. I mean, he can't really do too much. It was the first round. He got caught. And then Hanato, it's like, got caught in a grappling situation. If you knew you were outmanned, and then he sunk it in quick. Like, what else can you do? So, other than that, like, I think this was a good roller coaster of events, and it ended on a good high point. Islam's still the champ. It would have been good either way. Islam's still champ or and new. Like, it would have been a good night.
Yeah, yeah. Overall, I mean, I think that there were a couple of instances on this one that upset me only because I was, anticipating certain fighters to fight in a style and method that they weren't doing. So I was a little bit pissed off at individual fighters, but that's the sport of MMA and that's what makes it great. So, really nothing too negative to say in that regard.
And the officiating, we didn't have too many. We
Oh
didn't
yeah,
have,
yeah.
like, I think of the only weird one was the Zachary's, obviously. And then there was one moment with Yuri where he got poked, where he got the double eye poke from Jamal. And then they brought in the doctor, and the doctor's asking him, "Can you see?" And it's like, I mean, he's saying he wants to fight. Like, why are you asking him if he can see? And Yuri's like, ah,
That was funny though. Can you see? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he's great.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right, and it is kind of ridiculous that we have to point out when there are no bullshit refereeing instances, but that's just the world we live in as well. So overall, a fun event. I think it was a good time. It was a little bit of a roller coaster. Sometimes that pissed me off, but at the end of the day, that's what makes horse races. So I'm happy.
Yeah, we need to get back to this arena like pronto by the end of the year.
That is legitimately true. Absolutely. Yo, shout out to Jack Director, by the way, bro. Been missing you in the watch longs, my guy. But so yeah, that's 311. Let's move on to 312 real quick because we wanted to talk about this just briefly. So 312 is Dricus Duplessis versus Sean Strickland 2 going down in Australia, in Sydney, Australia to be exact. And a lot of people are a little bit upset with this card. Have you been keeping up with the fights on this card?
The only thing that I will note, and because everybody is giving a bad rep to 312, and there's two that I'm obviously excited for, the two championship fights, but it is unfortunate that I can see on the card that we have next week that there's two Australians that could be on this card, and people are complaining about the names on this card, but it's like they could have got Izzy probably, but that's somebody they want to book somewhere as a headline. They could have got Khan O'Fly, but they don't fucking like him for some reason. So, eh, but as I do look at this card, there's a hell of a lot of Australians. They're just not anybody that we really care about, you know?
Well, I think that that's the issue that a lot of people are having. A lot of people have been saying that this is a boxing style card where you've got two marquee fights and then a whole lot of names that people don't really know. Like they're not widely known,
Hmm.
and that perhaps not a lot of people care too much about, except for the Australia connection. Now, I mean, I understand that criticism. I mean, what I said to the response that I had to the criticism was, look, I mean, a lot of times you have these cards and then everybody complains about the name value and then they turn out to be banger cards. That
Hmm.
certainly can be the case, but I do understand the criticism of saying if you're only going to have these two marquee championship fights as the top of it and then pretty much not much to care about underneath it, then why is this even a pay-per-view? That I think holds some weight.
I can agree with you there. Why is it a pay per view? Because if they're going off the standpoint that I'm about to bring, is like there are a lot of Australian fighters on here, and they may not be people that we know as like global fans, but this is in Sydney, Australia. Maybe people are going to for the hometown guys, like they know these lower level guys because they're directly from Australia, like they train there, things like that. Like, but in that sense, if this is just a fan service card, doesn't need to be a pay per view now, does it? Because we've had plenty of fight nights. China was a fight night. Macau was cool. You didn't have to make it a pay per view. So I don't know. It is questionable.
Yeah, because I mean the criticism also that I had heard, and shout out to Bedtime MMA, who I had listened to a video talking about this. Bedtime is from Australia, so a little bit of a vested interest in this one. And he had said, strip one of the title fights and then make it a fight night. Like that's like having Zhang Weilei and Tatiana Suarez as a headliner for a fight night that is out in berm, so to speak, out outside of the apex. Like it would be a little bit disrespectful, but like at the same time, I mean, it would, or strip both title fights even if you wanted to, like have a higher level Australian headlining as well. That's
Literally
non-title.
could have been Izzy. Like,
It certainly could have been. Yeah, I mean, they decided they wanted him for the was it Saudi Arabia? I think is one coming up.
yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, I understand that aspect of it. Saudi Arabia has a lot of pull, a lot of money coming in from that area of the world. They want the best fights, they want the big fights, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, I do see it from the fan perspective when it comes to this. That like you you can you can be upset about the name value of this. I would say I think that there is some valid criticism there. Will it still be a good card, or could it still be a good card? Absolutely, it could be. I mean, that's always been my the way to look at it. But I just yeah, I do see this being a little bit of yeah. I mean, because you also have to think about it in terms of the financial aspect of it. I mean, when it's a fight night, it's one value as far as ticket prices go, and of course the pay-per-view cost and all that kind of stuff. Changes the whole dynamic of all that. So I mean, like you're changing the elements of the structuring to make it a pay-per-view when it might not be warranted in that regard, and charging people accordingly.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. It is a weird one. Like these, considering that last year, when the three cards that we started out with are the three pay-per-views, they felt like they were solid. Like they were solid. They were thought out, and we got three, like 297, 298, 299, up until 300. I felt like we were cooking, and then there was a little time at 301. It was a little whatever, but like these ones, like this one right here, 311 was good. This one right here, it doesn't have the same hype that 311 should
Yeah,
or did.
yeah. I mean, like I think that it is very telling when you have a Tafa brother in your featured fight, pre co-main.
To a dude he's gonna lose to, like so.
Well, potentially. I mean, this is a contender series guy, so that's the other thing that people were saying. It's like, we're gonna have a Tafa brother fighting a dude off the contender series. I mean, that does not scream pay-per-view level.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I mean, that's really all that there is to say about that in this instance, I would say. So, we're not going to go through and break anything down for this. Obviously, when this card is coming up, we will have our full breakdowns going on this very show. But just wanted to touch on it a little bit because it is something that has been in the discourse currently. So moving on from this, then I suppose we've got our requisite. It's becoming a trend on this very show that we cover a lot. Whoops, sorry. We cover a lot of the sport outside of the UFC, and our new favorite, like what seems to be an experiment that we're keeping our eyes on just because of how interesting this thing seems to be, is the GFL. So if you have been listening to the show for a while, we covered the GFL in its very early presentation, as far as just what they're releasing information wise about it. But some new information has come out, and Chase, you want to walk us through this a little bit?
Yeah, the new information that's coming out is that some of the athletes that are supposedly signed to the GFL have not actually consented or signed or actually agreed to fight in the GFL. And that is to note because earlier this wasn't the first note that I saw. Earlier there was a tweet about a fighter in the promotion. I can't think of his name right now. I think he was Polish, maybe something like that.
Oh yes, we have that as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is.
Sorry.
I can go over to that too if you're
Yeah,
looking for that.
we'll grab
What?
that one
My bad.
first. You're
Messing
fine.
this up. Sorry.
We'll
But
grab that one
yeah, sorry.
first. So I first saw this one, and this is basically a guy who signed to the GFL, but it was something along the lines that he had 7 months ago or something, he had been incarcerated and he's now about to serve like 7 years in prison. How the hell is he signed to the league? So that's the first thing I saw. And then now it's coming out that there's other fighters that have been seeing their names being thrown out that they are signed to the GFL, but have not actually signed to the GFL, which is very, very interesting because I don't even believe this is like a real thing yet. It can't be, surely.
Well, what it's giving the impressions of is that they might just be pulling a whole bunch of names that they know of, people that they think might be interested, potentially, possibly, or maybe they have some kind of talks in the works, and then they're just jumping the gun on it.
Mhm.
Perhaps. I mean, maybe. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, really, because why would you just randomly be going around the planet saying you're in the GFL, you're in the GFL, you're in? They've got graphics made up for all these guys too.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and so like if you read this, the comment on this post right here, and it's like the dude says, "I ask you to please remove this post. I am a contractor for another organization. I didn't sign anything with you." I think that is very key to note because Robelis de Spain has been signed to the GFL for months now, but he is scheduled to fight in karate combat this Friday. I don't know how it works. I don't know how the GFL is. In my opinion, if you want my word, I think this is a betting simulator somehow, some way. I don't know. That's just my thing. I ugh.
It certainly does feel like we're living in a simulation when it comes to the GFL. Yeah, so I mean, we've got several fighters that are saying that they are, not actually signed to this organization. And then to go back to what Chase started off with here with the this Polish fighter, this is a guy who his name is where. Well, yeah, that's quite a name to say, but
Prisbislaw.
yeah, Prismislaw Miasala, and he was stopped by police with 72,000 pounds in cash in his car, taking cocaine into some UK laundry into the UK in laundry bags. So he's had all kinds of illegal problems. Whatever, that's that is what it is. But the point is that he's sentenced to jail time. So how could he be signed to an organization and potentially fighting for them? So just a little bit more weirdness to add on to the already very strange set of circumstances surrounding this GFL. I mean, they had come out talking about their weight classes. We went over that a little bit on the show of how they're not following standard weights and all that stuff, and more stuff has been coming out with that. It's just this whole organization is just very, very odd and continuing to get odder.
Would I would hate to be the team that drafts this guy because this is a draft pick for 2032. Like, holy shit, Jesus Christ. Like, he ain't gonna make it to the GFL 20. They ain't gonna make it to 2032.
Yeah, I
That's
mean it's
crazy.
the only way, right? I mean,
Like, did he pick up the jail phone and say, yeah, I mean, I'm down. Like, whenever y'all can get me out, like, fuck, we'll fucking fight. Like, I don't, this is so crazy of a story.
Well, that's why it goes back to what my thinking on this is like the only thing I can think of is that they either are in very preliminary talks with some of these guys and are just jumping the gun on it, or they're just going through other organization rosters or going through confirmed retired fighters or inactive fighter rosters, something like that. I would shudder to think that they just opened Tapology and just randomly spun the wheel, saying, you, and you are on our roster now, but like those are the only real options that I'm seeing here. If they're saying one thing and the fighters themselves are saying another thing.
Some of the names, like it does feel like hat draws. Like it does feel like, okay, let's pick out Frank Mir. Of course, yeah, we'll take Frank Mir. Andre Arlovsky, yeah, we'll take him. But then some of these other people are too obscure to you to even make it in the hat. Like I just it's really, really weird. And I'm very excited to see it, guys. I'm not gonna lie.
I think that
I
that should be the
yeah.
takeaway too, is that like the reason that we're keeping our eye on this so much and like, having like the day-to-day tracking of these things is because once this thing finally does fucking launch, it's going to be very interesting to see what we actually get on screen, you know?
Yeah, I'm very excited because it's gonna be crazy. Like some of these dudes on here might not even have internet access to like even know that they're on in the GFL now. And what's even funnier, I just noticed Caio Machado, the dude who went to 3 rounds with Brenson Ribeiro and stunk up the fucking thing, the Canadian Brazilian.
Yes.
He's signed to the GFL now. So
Well,
says the website.
well, I mean, more, I suppose. I mean,
OSP.
yeah, I think we mentioned him last time. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
We
my
there
goodness.
there are names on it, names that you would certainly recognize.
He's actually on here twice with 2 different pictures. OSP, nice. They got him in
OSP
here
times
twice.
two.
Yep.
Well, all right. I mean, yeah, so that's what I'm telling. There is a lot surrounding this that is certainly piquing our curiosity. I would say so. Curiouser and curiouser, I guess, is the way that we will leave this little segment here, but just some more tidbits to keep in mind as we're kind of keeping our eye on this thing from the ground floor. So, we still don't have a prospective launch date for this experiment that is the GFL. Obviously, we'll keep you posted as more information comes out, as we have been doing. But here's your dose of weirdness for GFL for the week.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that Dana is like ready to fucking pounce on this company because I'm on their website and like I know it's maybe not it's probably unethical, but they have the UFC photos like on here. Like these aren't just like stock photos. Like these are the UFC stock photos. I'm hoping they just fucking sue them. Like,
It could be, yeah, intellectual property being taken by that. I don't know. Maybe do the fighters retain the likeness for that for the images themselves? Probably not. You're probably right. There's probably some
yeah.
legal precedent there, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just it's what this is starting to remind me of. I know you're a wrestling guy, Chase. I'm not as big of a pro wrestling person, but we've kind of touched on Jim Cornette in certain times here before, and Jim Cornette would consider something like this to be a little bit of an outlaw mud show, I believe is how he would describe this. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's what this is actually going to end up being, but like it sort of smacks of something like that.
I I just think listen, it's just really crazy that they have these pictures that say signed on them, and then people are coming out saying, "I have never even seen a contract type of deal." But what I'm sorry, I know to take it off script, but this one is actually very important because we really like this guy. Guess who signed to the GFL, Mr. Zigomantis Ramaska?
Oh, did we not see that last time? Maybe
I
that's new.
don't think so. I think that is new. This is Listen, they're just signing anybody who leaves the UFC. Brian Keller, this dude is on here too. Like these
Brian
dudes
Kelleher?
just,
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah, these dudes just left the UFC too. Like they're ready to go.
Yeah. And the other note that I
Whoa, Mateus Nicolau, what is going
oh,
on?
yeah, they really are just scooping them right up fresh off the exit.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow,
that's
wow, wow,
crazy.
wow, wow.
What I
Okay,
had
sorry,
said
go
too
ahead.
no, 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 what I'd said about it is that, we're possibly, if this does end up taking off to some way, shape, or form, I mean, it's a very big if on that one, but if there is something here, you could potentially be seeing the fighters' lifetime pipeline being established in real time because you could have conceivably a fighter. I'm not saying that this in any way, shape, or form would be the situation for her, but let's just say, for example, a Dakota Ditcheva type who comes in very hot in PFL, starts out her career in PFL, tears through that, goes into the UFC, has her career, whatever it may be there, does her time in the UFC at the top of the heap, and then gracefully retires to the GFL.
Listen, I I might have to just keep up with the roster to see who's new here because Corey McKenna is now in the GFL
Bro,
along with Mariah Agapova, our homeless girl. She needs a check, of course. And then Paige Van Zant is also a member of the GFL.
that's wild, dude. Yeah, they really are scooping them up left and right. And I mean, and look, another point to all of that is that obviously there is either some legitimate money here, or if there's not, then how many of these fighters actually really are signed?
Yeah, they paid for a whole website, guys, and they have cities based on this: GFL London, Dubai, Sao Paulo, New York, Los Angeles, and what's this other one? I can't even see. But either way, like it seems as official as you can make. Like, wait a minute, what is happening? They got different. Wait a minute. Okay, so Dubai has leaders Cain Velasquez, Loyo Machida is Sao Paulo. What is that? Ray
Oh, they might
Longo
have
is
that
New
might
York.
they might have had their team leader. I guess those are the team leaders, because this is
I
a team based thing.
Well, we actually, oh my goodness, the GFL draft starts in 3 days, guys.
All right. Well,
Wow.
see, breaking news, I suppose.
I'm fucking ready. Let's
All right,
go.
let's keep an eye on it. I guess I don't know if their socials are established yet, but we got to make sure that we're following all their social media and keeping up with this stuff, just to keep everybody informed, as we have been. So that's the latest from the GFL. Keep your eyes and ears open, and in 3 days' time, perhaps next week, we'll be coming back with more news.
I'm excited for this one. This is some new shit that is just, it's going to be so off the wall that it's going to be some good content. Because, like, when I describe it to you, when I tell you that Frank Mir and Robelis de Spain could potentially match up, like, this year, it's like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about a video game? Like, Frank Mir hasn't fought in fucking 30 years. Like, it's just insanity because they're also touting this as a league predicated on, like, the fighter's health and the restructure of the payment system and retirement plans and benefits. Like, how is this exactly going to work if they haven't done it before? It's like you can't just make everybody. I feel like I talked about this on the Discord. I don't think we were on call. It's like everybody thinks they know something, but like when you get out and you actually try to execute it, sometimes you just realize it's not a good plan and you got to scrap it quick or you're going to be you're going to be fucked for a little bit. The UFC has a product that they know is perfected to a certain extent. The PFL, they copied it. You know, there's the cheap ripoffs of it. And then you have the GFL, they think they can come in and do something new and just sign all these great fighters, like all these blah, 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 blah. And like, we're going to do it this way. And he's never done it this way. And I hope Dana is just taking note. And I can't wait for the press conferences where he's just laughing at this fucking like this product. Seriously, I, I'm I have a little hope that it's going to be interesting, but I have zero hope that it's going to be like actually worth like combat sports like engagement kind of deal. Like this is just funky stuff going on.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of question marks, a lot of variables in play right now that we're really going to just have to see what ends up actually taking place with this thing. But it does remind me of like old school, like golden age of MMA kind of stuff, where it was like you had Elite XC, you had fucking the like other these promotions that just pop up out of nowhere that like
Mhm,
it's Yama. Yeah, the Yama pit fighting was another example of that, where it's just like, is this going to be like a one event and done kind of thing where they can't sustain it? Like,
mhm.
I mean, we're in uncharted territory with this GFL thing. So keep your eyes and ears open.
Yeah, it might be just a thing. They like, what if all these people that are quote unquote signed, it's just a one fight deal, like somehow breaching their contract some way. We don't know. Maybe they get one fight out of them and just see if it works. But at this point, there's too much money into it. It's already like they've already got the back door. They've been thinking about this
Yeah.
for years. They had to have been cooking this up, and this is the best they've got. And the fact that it doesn't sound right and it doesn't add up is just not a good sign. Because, like, what does Chael always say about charlatans and stuff like this? It's like, I don't know what they're selling me here, but it don't seem like the product that I'm thinking I'm gonna get.
Yeah, we're very much in the attention era when it comes to all manner of life. It's social media is vying for your attention at all times, this kind of thing. Sports world is no different. So, you're in a very, very, very competitive space when it comes to MMA because there's only so much bandwidth to go around. And you're vying for the attention of people whose attention is already very much taken by the main product. Same reason that we cover PFL and all these other organizations. It's like the UFC is the YouTube. This is barely a Rumble right now. So, I mean, we're going to just have to see if this thing can actually get to the point of being a legitimate Rumble.
I think it's just going to be interesting just the way that they're presenting this idea because they have this their little mission statement. I'm looking at it. It says this groundbreaking league unites fans and athletes, creating MMA's most passionate community. If you are thinking that by prioritizing the health and wellness and retirement is going to bring the local fans to watch Frank Mir at age 50, like I don't know. That's people aren't gonna want to see, like, if we're gonna watch Frank Mir, we're not gonna want to watch him babied at 50 and then they end the fights early because he's an old fucking man type of deal. Like, if that's not gonna make a passionate core, what we want, like I would say, the passionate fans, they want to see him at the best of their ability at the top of their game. It's like when someone's out of their, I already signed up for that, by the way.
Oh, cool. All right.
If somebody's past their prime, it's like we got to accept that. I don't want to see them at age 50 cutting weight. How is that uniting the fans and athletes when I'm watching somebody who's way past their time, shouldn't even be participating anymore? I don't even want to see them participate anymore, but you're shoving it in my face. What is passionate about that? I don't know. Like, it is weird. It is weird.
I might not be the first person to have said this, but I'll take credit for it because I haven't heard it anywhere else. This could very well end up being referred to often as the Grandfather's League. Um, so I mean, but that's a derogatory way to look at it. But you got a lot of younger fighters, as we were saying. Ziggy Mantis is on there. All these, the Corey McKenna, all those people that you just named. It's just very odd. The whole thing is very weird. There's a lot of weirdness surrounding it if you're paying attention to it. That I think is something that organizations like this kind of bank on, is that people really aren't paying attention to it until they are like until it's in their face.
Mhm.
So all of these back end little dealings and stuff, if down the line, this is why it's good to keep up with it via this show if you're out there listening, because we're seeing all of the seeds as they're being planted. So if this thing does end up being a success or a colossal failure, which it very, we don't know where it's going to go one way or another, but it kind of, we've got inklings of things not being correct already. You're at least seeing the progression as we're seeing it in real time, so you understand where you get to from where you were.
I always think about, like, with phone companies. I know this is a crazy bridge, but it's like that many people can't possibly be using this type of phone. And so you got to imagine the people who work for the phone company are all using that type of phone. Like they have at least one of them. And so when I think of, I don't even know where I was going with this, but when I think of fucking this fucking fight league, dude, I don't know. Wherever that phone thing was going, I lost it.
All right. Well, let's leave that there
Yeah,
anyway. We'll
the
move on from
GFL, man,
GFL, but
it's just fucked, man.
so
It's
yeah,
just
I
fucked.
well, I mean, we don't know yet. Is I think where we got to leave it.
Mm.
It could be interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
you got it. Go
So
for it.
when I think of all the people who are going to be watching this, it's going to be the friends and families of people who are participating it or who are like in the actual show. Like, oh, I get to, I'm seeing what my son works on, kind of deal. We will be actually two of the people not related to it, other than viewers. We will get the viewing experience other than the biased. Where's my son? I'm looking for him in the fucking crowd type thing. Two viewers, I think, is at minimum what the GFL can get. Maybe max will legitimately people wanting to watch this to see what it is can't be more than like 500. Like seriously.
I mean, it's a global sport. Perhaps there are people
It
out
is
there
the
that are.
global fight league, but honestly, if you type in GFL, there's 10 more companies that come up like on top of it. So just saying.
Well, we are in at the ground floor, so keep it locked to last week's fights for more information as it comes out.
Mm.
All right, let's move on from the GFL. I think we've given them plenty of shine. Just briefly wanted to touch on this. We don't need to go too deep into it, but so we've talked plenty of times about the PFL and all of the fighters defecting. I thought that this was interesting that Patricio Pitbull, who is one of their biggest fighters, has been very vocal about wanting to leave. He was finally granted his release as well, so he is a free agent. There have been rumblings about him possibly coming to the UFC. Seems a little bit of it would be like an MVP situation where it's probably not the best fit for him in the UFC. I would say that him going over to One Championship would probably be the better move, even though One Championship has also been criticized for their business practices. I wanted to point this one out specifically because this is one of, if not their biggest star, I would say, as far as active, like, prime or close to prime fighters goes.
I think it's interesting because they asked Dana this question, and I forget the other fighter that they brought up, but they asked him, like, do you think such and such, and then Pitbull will make their way to the UFC? And Dana, he said to the other guy, he was like, oh, yeah, we're looking into him. But when it came to Pitbull, he was kind of like, we're going to see how it works out. Like, we got to blah, 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 blah. And so what I'm thinking, and this is just me playing 4D chess, it's like Pitbull has already been the type of dude to outwardly talk about his contract and put the blame on the promotion. Maybe Dana just doesn't want to, at least not right now. Let's play the field and not take on a person who's going to talk about how shitty we pay him, if that's whatever.
And that very well could be, but I mean, really, I think that in that line of thinking, it's an interesting spot in general because you had all of these fighters who are very vocal about how they were treated in this organization specifically. But if they don't have anywhere else to go, then what options do they have? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So you kind of shoot yourself in the foot a little bit in that regard. It's like, do you want to fight at all? I mean, taking one fight if you're not getting as many fights as you want in the PFL could be preferable as opposed to not fighting anywhere. So it's an interesting time, and I think it just, like I said, we don't need to dwell on it too long. But I wanted to at least touch on it because, as I said, this is one of their biggest stars in this situation, and it creates this atmosphere where the PFL has had a lot of negative press surrounding them with these fighters. I did a stream about Don Davis not too long ago, and that was a big point that I drew from it was that all of the things that Don Davis was talking about as far as negatives for PFL when he posted like a thing on LinkedIn. You know, he's very big on LinkedIn. He's very much a businessman. So he was going through all these negative things as far as like advertisers pulling out and sponsorships and things like that. I was like, the everyday fan would not know any of those inner working things if you weren't posting about it on LinkedIn. What they would know is this. They would know that the fighters that whose names they know and who they potentially could be following on social media or at least hear about through the grapevine and MMA culture are very unhappy. So I mean, your forward-facing product towards the public is being tarnished very heavily by these things. And now these fighters are in an odd position because if, as you said, Dana's not looking to pick up a guy like Pitbull, who is one of their biggest stars, then now where do they go? How does the landscape change if they're defecting from one place and not able to fight in another place? And how does that look for the PFL going forward in their own capacity?
It is going to be interesting. The PFL, like we said, it's going to be on some rocky roads. They just shut down the other part of their company kind of deal. So moving forward, I mean, we'll see how they take it. I mean, it seems like they have a plan, but like I said, everybody thinks they know something. Until you actually get the plan going, you find out how it's a lot harder than you believed. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
And to that point, just to end up the PFL little portion here, I did find it interesting as well on that same stream that I was just talking about, where I was going over some of Don Davis's stuff. I found a great think piece. I forget what the outlet was. I'd have to go back and look that up, but it was basically an article saying that Ryzen is kind of going in one direction as far as their business model goes, and PFL is sort of going in a different direction. And Ryzen is seemingly becoming very comfortable in being another feeder organization for the UFC. That's why we saw Kai Asakura come over and why we saw Sean O'Malley go over to Japan recently on his little press tour that he does.
Mhm.
So Ryzen is cozying up to the UFC, PFL trying to set themselves apart from the UFC, um, but going about it in a way that is not necessarily super fan friendly, maybe now a little bit more so with Bellator going down and them taking away the tournament system as it was, with the points and everything and the playoffs and all the dumb shit that no one cared about. Maybe that will help a little bit, but it was just an interesting note that like Ryzen is taking a very definitive path in one direction and PFL is taking a very opposite path to that. We're just going to have to see how it all affects the landscape.
100%.
So, and then the very last thing that I had that I thought was a interesting and good thing to note, and this is shout out to Checkmate Entertainment for bringing this to my attention. But I saw this on Checkmate's page and wanted to bring it up. The NCAA, that is college sports, that's the governing body of college athletics, has recently added women's wrestling to their championship roster. I was not aware that there was not women's wrestling at the collegiate level up until this point, but it would seem that, or at least in championship terms or whatever, but it would seem that now women's wrestling is finally getting a little bit more of a platform at the college level, which could be huge for MMA.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see decent wrestlers come in, but if you think about that, none of them have been to like a collegiate level of wrestling. If they get that under their belt before they come into, the UFC or whatever, or MMA period, it's going to be a good backbone to their skill set. I mean, and honestly, it might even show how behind we are. Like maybe there's not collegiate level of wrestling for women and other parts of the world, but maybe there's something that's, a little higher than high school wrestling or whatever they would be able to do other than, get to the collegiate level with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, really not too much to mention about this because there's really not an overlap with MMA just yet, but something to be aware of because I think that going forward now you see these younger women fighters that are going to be coming up into the sport. If they are coming up through this system, you could be seeing a higher evolution in women's athletics in general, and of course in the UFC and other MMA organizations, which as we were kind of going over on the stream where we broke down the women's divisions, like you really need quality talent infusions on a regular basis when it comes to the women. It's a male dominated sport. That's just kind of the nature of it. Not by any fault of any, it's not like women are intentionally being excluded anymore, but, just by the nature of what fighting sort of is culturally. Like, it's going to be more skewed towards men. So to see the women kind of rising their own stocks through programs like this could be very, very beneficial.
I'm listening to you. I agree, man.
Yeah, so that's about it. I mean, I think that really we covered a whole hell of a lot of ground today, but that is what we got for you. So we are off. The reason that we went down this little train of thought is because we are having an off week. I did think that was a little unfortunate. Felt like we were just getting back into the swing of things, and we got another off week from UFC. So unfortunate, another little weekend to have a break from fighting if that's what you wanted. Of course, I don't think a lot of us did, but either way, we will not have fights this weekend. Are you trying to do the Karate Combat card? Is that the plan for Friday?
I am definitely gonna stream the Karate Combat card. I unfortunately believe that it is only 5 fights.
Yeah, that I think their cards are shorter.
So that'll be just a short one, but I'm very excited to do that. The GFL draft, I might tune in to see what that's about. I don't think it's gonna be like a live streamed program, but
Something to keep. Not well. Now that you're on the mailing list, I guess we'll have to keep updated on that one. So
exactly.
either
So
way, I might pop in over on Chase's stream for the Karate Combat. Perhaps we're working on some other stuff for later in the week as far as potential content stuff goes. Yama episode will be coming out this week, so keep an eye out for that. Either way, keep up with us on the social medias and on our channels to make sure that you are current with everything we got going on, because there's always something new coming out here. And for myself, I know that is youtube.com/@Yama Show. And Chase, I know you can tell them where they can find you.
they can find me at youtube.com/@CP Smalls, and I will be on Twitter hanging out at Creative Parton, Partin.
Absolutely. Make sure you follow my boy @Yama Show on all socials for me as well. And if you are looking to support this show, we very much appreciate the support that we already have. If you want to take that up one level, Chase has last week's fights shirts available. You can hit him up and he will get you one of those. So until next time, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. We will be back soon. And as always, fight on.